Good evening. I'm going to call to order the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission meeting for Monday, June 7th, 2021. As you probably already know, this is the first time we've all been together, and this is the first time we've all been in this room with some new technology. So hopefully tonight we don't have too many kinks, but bear with us, we'll work through this. And then we also have a new member present, Mr. Craig Merlin on the end here. Welcome. And Wendy Korsnich has been with us virtually, but not in person yet. So welcome as well. So with that, I think we'll record the attendance. All members are present, and we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. At this time, we will approve the current agenda, but before I ask for that approval, I would like to make a couple of quick comments. We've had some, it has been brought to my attention about a few members wanting to add some things for discussion. And we have on the agenda at Article 11, any other business. So I think that would be a fine spot to address that as long as time allows. I don't think any of us want to stay here, past 9, 10 o'clock at night, but absolutely feel that's appropriate. And I think with that, as the other, let's see, we have, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So, yeah, so that Member Nordhook, you have some questions. This is going to be confusing with Nordike and Nordhook together, but I'm going to work on it.
Say we on Article 5, we have where visitors could speak to non-agenda items. I think I'd like to, for this evening, to have visitors speak to agenda items as well.
I have no problem with I think technically we should be letting people speak to anything at that point, because there is not an opportunity for an agenda item with no public hearing. So I would agree. And that's typically how we've done things at the Planning Commission, but yes, thank you for highlighting that. Anyone else have any concerns or thoughts here? Could we get an approval for the, yes?
I just have one comment. If trustee or now member, I guess in this role, Nordhook, I was having a hard time hearing from over here. I don't know whether those microphones are.
Boo.
Oh, now I can hear you just fine.
All right, we good?
Very good.
Thank you, Member Merlin. Okay, with that, do we have a motion to approve the current agenda?
So moved, Member Nordike.
Thank you, Member Nordike. Do we have support?
Support.
Thank you, Member Deering, for the support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Moving on to Article 4, which is to approve the minutes of the April 19, 2021 meeting. And does anybody have any comments about that?
Member Castle would move to approve. Support.
Can I add one comment before we get too far ahead? I had to find it, but I did. On page 4, in the middle of the page, it says Chairman Rissy asked is members had any questions at this time. Just a little grammatic tweak there. I think that's supposed to read a little different than asked is members.
Ask for an F.
I'm guessing it says ask the members maybe, but or anyhow, yeah. So other than that, I would proceed with your, is that acceptable?
Maybe ask if.
Right. Asked if members had any questions at this time. Okay. With that subtle change, we have the
I would still make my motion.
motion by Member Katzba, support by Member Nordike. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving right along. At this time, we would like to acknowledge any visitors and those who wish to speak to any agenda item or non-agenda item. They may do so. I would ask that you step up to the podium, the microphone, and speak your name and address loudly. And we'll make sure we get to everyone.
Good evening. My name is Mark Rohde, 3087 Thornapple River Drive, and I'm here with my wife, Gail. I suspect most of you know who I am, but just in case, I'm an adjacent landowner to the Round Hill project. And I appreciate what Tim did, because I've got things that I would like to talk about that are agenda and non-agenda, and they sort of flow over one to the other. As I'm sure Chairman Rissy knows, there's a long history with Round Hill and me involved. And it was settled amicably last year, and the project went on to construction. Hallelujah. We went on with our lives, and I didn't anticipate I was going to be here again. Other than seeing democracy in action live, which I would have come for. I came here because I wasn't invited to come here. What I mean by that is that there is an agenda item for Round Hill, a proposed amended PUD. The procedure, as I know it's always been, has been if there is a proposed PUD amendment, all adjacent landowners are invited by letter 2 weeks in advance of the meeting, that there is a meeting regarding a potential PUD amendment and so you can attend. 5.5 years ago on Round Hill, the first meeting, Central Point, one of the adjacent landowners, was never invited to be at the meeting. And because of that, the meeting was canceled, and they were given 2 weeks advance notice, and the meeting was rescheduled. Since there is an amended PUD request here, I didn't know anything about it, except a neighborhood member told me about it. And I talked to one of the other adjacent landowners, Harold Roy. He didn't have any knowledge of it. I assume Sentinel Point didn't have any knowledge of it. And while this might be Robert's Rules of Orders, one of the things that has concerned me as we go on with Round Hill is that everything be built by the book now. There's been problems, we all know about it, they're in the past, but now it needs to be dealt with the way it should be dealt with. And there was no advance notice given for this meeting. And I found that to be odd, so that's why I checked up on it. The issue per se isn't that small, isn't that big, but it did bring up one other thing that, I've watched Round Hill be built, and Mr. Juicy is building some nice condo units, and apparently things are going well. But my big BMF wall of Babylon, everybody now knows what that thing looks like, is been sitting there for 8 months. And in that time, there's never been a guardrail put up 42 inches high, required by code. If I were building a product, I would be shut down if I had this. We've got a retaining wall that's up to 16 foot high, and you can walk right off it into eternity. And for 8 months, the developer knows that these things are required. The township inspectors, so these things are required, and yet nothing has been done. There was an accident during the construction there that was related to that. And I would look at this thing, and I wouldn't have come up here just for this. I would have left well enough alone. But since I'm here, I find it odd that there's something that sort of stands out as a safety issue that's never been dealt with. And it doesn't have per se anything to do with tonight's meeting, but I thought I would bring it up. I have some comments regarding this, specifically the request for a pool. I can step away, and when we get into that and we discuss everything else, I can come back if I couldn't speak about it, or I could speak about it right now.
Why don't you speak about it right now? You get a couple more minutes.
Because we were talking about the guardrail. Okay, I've looked at the drawings. I understand what Mr. Giusti wants. I understand maybe what the landowner wants. But there are issues involved with building this. The drawings right now do not have sufficient information for you to pass it. First of all, there needs to be a cross section through the grade going up to what is really Cascade Township property and library land property, because this land sits over the top of where that retaining wall would be. And so there's a danger for the people that are here falling down over the retaining wall. We need to make sure that there's a guardrail for the retaining wall. We need to know how high the retaining wall is. We need to know how the water coming down the hill from Sentinel Point, from Township property gets diverted. And if I were the landowner, the person who wants a pool, I'd want a taller wall there just for privacy, because people from the library could just walk over there and look down at somebody swimming in the pool. But as a safety issue, there needs to be issues with how high the retaining wall is, what the guardrail is going to be, and how they're going to deal with other things. There just isn't enough information to deal with it. And that retaining wall is well over 100 foot long, running really along the property line, parallel with the property line. And there's insufficient information to deal with it. And also, while it shows a pool, it doesn't show how big the concrete deck would be around the pool. And there's just a little bit of insufficient information. Specifically, and this is a hot button with me, going back 5.5 years ago. It shows right now a retaining wall in the middle of a property line setback. You can't have that. Mr. Peterson and I have argued this about before, but I've had multiple attorneys' opinions that I'm correct. And I have Mr. Peterson orally, thankfully, on audio, confirming it in a May 2019 meeting regarding putting in a deck for one of these condos that would extend into the setback. His own words were, anything over 30 inches high is considered to be a structure and can't be in a setback. I know this is a fact. You can't have the retaining wall in the setback. It has to be dealt with separately as an issue. Either, Scott, as you know, if somebody wants to put something in the setback that is not allowed, they can ask for a hearing with the planning commission, and they can explain why that their need to be in the setback would somehow benefit the adjacent landowner, and they have that mechanism. But you can't show it there. It is a structure and it can't be there. The setback's already being moved from 25 foot to 10 foot. You have the right to approve that. You can put the retaining wall at the 10-foot line, and you have a right to do it, but you can't put it in the retaining wall. You can make a five foot setback and it's legal, but it can't be shown there because procedurally it isn't allowed by the ordinances. But other than that, Gail and I have no problem with the swimming pool there. It's in the northeast quadrant. I don't think Mr. Roy, who was there, I talked to, I don't think he'd be bothered by it. You know, I think they're going to have a problem with leaves in the pool with all the trees, but that's a different thing. I have no problem with it being there. I just want to see that if you do approve it or you do want to consider it, let's just do it by the ordinances and do it the correct way. That's all I'm asking.
If I could, and I don't want this to become public conversation because it's public comment, but I would like to just address and I'm sure staff will back me up here if I'm off on this, but this is basic preliminary review. And when we get to the actual preliminary review, if after this meeting, the applicant hears our comments and he wants to proceed, at that time you would be notified.
Okay.
And there would be an actual public hearing on this particular topic.
And some of these things I'm
kinda
asking for, would be occurring.
Right.
Okay.
So this is kind of at the very
Okay.
beginning. So I think this is where the applicant kind of tests the waters and then decides how they want to proceed from there. Would you say that's a proper assessment?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I have no problem with Tom building the pool as long as everything goes through the proper procedures.
I understand. Thank you. Anyone else like to step up to the microphone and state your name and address?
Hey, good evening, Jeff Dion, 2984 Thornapple River Drive. Yeah, I came up to say thanks. It's great that the meetings are back in session. It's very important that the community has involvement and has a place to come up and see everybody face to face. I have attended some of the meetings online and listened to them, but it's just not the same as being here in person. So thank you for doing this. I know we're all at a little bit of risk being here, but I think that's something we have to take for our community and the development of the community. And that's really what I'm here to speak to. I had it on my agenda. I have some kind of I call it a hit list of subjects I think I need to keep hammering on. Scott laughs, but he knows what some of them are and some of them aren't. But the most important thing is that community members like myself have a place to come to voice those things so that you can clearly hear what the community is concerned about. So I see article number 9, Kent County Road Commission 5-year improvement plan. I think in the past in planning, we've talked about, where is Cascade? Where's the new Cascade? What's it going to look like? And I keep going back to the fact that you as our board that governs planning needs to start with road planning. You can't plan a community without planning the roads first. And this is critical to what's happening here today. I live on Thornapple River Drive. When I moved in over 10 years ago, it was a quiet, scenic route. It was a scenic road. It had no truck signs on that road. Yesterday, I pulled my son out of the line of somebody running past the red light on the bus and almost killing him. So we have got to do more to protect our neighborhoods. Thornapple River Drive is a neighborhood, and we've turned it into a racetrack. Mark's had crashes in his yard. I've had ones that everybody knows about in mine, but we need to change the structure of how these roads are moving and redirect them. And I've said it at all the meetings. You guys have taken your business traffic and directed through our neighborhood, endangering us and funneling them to the highway. So I'd really like to see you take an active role in planning these roads first and figuring out where that traffic needs to move to, and then move it correctly through those places safely with enforcement, with whatever it takes to control these speeds, because people are going to get hurt. We see it all the time, the accidents, and it's really scary when I can't even go to the bus stop and not worry about, and I'm sure you face that same thing, Scott, where you're at. So, you're in even a more critical area. And I don't know where everybody lives, but I know where Scott lives because I've tried to turn in his driveway. But we really, it's like the bike paths, when you turn and there's a bike path there, you got to be really careful of the bike path too. So we need to take those things into account. One of the things that I've mentioned is that, we did this old 29th Street diversion. We have this great, I call it the Family Fair Plaza. We really need to direct traffic down 28th Street and figure out a bypass to get them to Ada correctly with a large structure, a 4-lane road, or funnel it down. I know some of you don't want to hear this. It'd be great if you could dead end it at the park, Thornapple River Drive, and put it back to a community setting, because semis are going down our road with they're hauling double sand truck down a road that isn't intended for that. I mean, it's just crazy. So I really hope that when you look at how you're planning our community going forward, you put back some serious thought to how you're going to control that. And the control is the roads. I've heard before that, we can't control what Kent County Road Commission does. And my rebuttal to that is look at Ada. They changed everything and they did a wonderful job. You go through Ada, they've condensed it down. It slows you down. I just went through there to pick up my boat last week, and it slowed everything down, and it's funneled down to 1 lanes. So please take a hard look at that and really put a lot of time and planning thought into where our community is going to be and how it develops, because I feel like this time's developing and I know COVID hit and you guys were really working on that plan, but I think it's really starts with the road. So I'm sorry if I overhit on that, but please look at that and spend some time, because we really need to protect our kids. I used to walk across the bridge all the time in front of the dam at Cascade Road, and we don't do that anymore because of inherent dangers with it.
You're running out of time, Jeff. So.
Okay, second subject, just really quick. I came in front of the board a couple of years ago on a side set issue, 10-foot side set. I was rejected. I'm not here to debate rejection. My point that I've made at other meetings is that we have rules. If we're going to enforce them equally, then enforce them equally, and really put some thought into how you're doing that, because I've said it before, we can't selectively enforce our rules. And when you do that, it comes off as looking negative to those that get rejected. So whether it's, side set setbacks or sheds or whatever it is, we need to stick to the rules and have it clear that we understand them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. And I do remember your comments about the road before with the plaza, and I thought that was a very good comment you made. Do we have anyone else that'd like to make a public comment here in the audience before we see if we have any online folks? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, both of the online participants are with Planner Hillbrand's case, their applicants.
All right, then. We will move forward to article number 6, which is case number 213629, Bob Morse. This is for essentially the Pizza Hut property. Brian, what do you have?
Hello, everyone. It's the first time I've seen most of you in person, so good to see you all.
Try to stand in front of the microphone so we can make sure we hear you if you can.
So you've seen most of you have seen this once before. The applicant's requesting a basic plan review to amend the existing PUD to allow for the construction of a new car wash. They came before us back at our April 19 meeting, but since then the applicant's been proposing a couple of different site plans. So I recommended that they come back for another basic plan review then, since they have a few different options they were hoping we would look at here. Before getting into it, it is important to keep in mind that it is still a basic plan review. So we're not getting quite into all the details yet. That would be at the next step at our preliminary plan review and public hearing. This review is a little different because they're giving us 3 options here. So it would be helpful if we give them some direction of what they should kind of focus on moving forward. So I'll try to give a quick kind of overview, a quick reintroduction to that plan. So the property is located on 28th Street, south side of that 28th Street, and includes 2 parcels. There's currently an abandoned Pizza Hut on the west parcel, and then which is zoned PUD 80. And then there's a motel on the eastern parcel that's zoned B2. And there's a vacant small right-of-way section between the 2. The applicant's requesting that the PUD 80 be amended to include all of these properties. So the applicant's basic plan A, the one on the screen there, it's very similar to the original plan that they introduced at the last meeting in April. They're proposing to combine all the parcels as well as the right-of-way and then place both a car wash building and a separate drive-through coffee shop building on the one parcel. As I noted at our last meeting there, our zoning ordinance only allows for one building with a primary use on a parcel. So that'd be the car wash, and then the coffee shop would be considered the second building with a primary use, which would not be permitted. There are a few examples in the township where there are multiple commercial buildings on one parcel. They included a number of those in their submission there. There's a couple of differences between those examples and what's being proposed here. In all of those examples, the property is being used as a retail strip center. So it's buildings with multiple tenants in each one. And so the use is the same for each building. It's a multi-tenant site. And none of those are involved kind of 2 standalone buildings with different businesses like we're seeing in this case. And then the other difference is the size of the parcels. And the examples that we have with multiple buildings on one parcel, the number of buildings is based on the minimum lot size requirements for the underlying zoning. For example, they mentioned the Thornapple Shopping Center, which is the one at 28th Street and Cascade there. So it has 4 buildings on it, and it's just over 10 acre in size. The underlying zoning there is a B1, so that only requires a 20,000 square foot minimum. And so that parcel would require 80,000 square feet to have the 4 buildings, and the 10 acres far exceeds that. And I think another example there is the Cascade Center buildings. These are just a couple of parcels west where I think there's Thornapple Brewing, those 2 buildings there. So that's the B2 underlying zoning has a 3 acre minimum size, so it needs 6 acres, and that parcel is 6.4 acres there. So it's based on that minimum size. And here the applicant's proposing having 2 buildings with different uses on just a 2.1 acre parcel. And it's a B2, so the parcel would not be large enough to accommodate a second building there. The applicant's basic plan B.
Push it up a little further, maybe.
Yeah, I'll try to zoom out. Yeah, I'll try that. Okay. The applicant's basic plan B there, it's similar to the first plan, except each building is on its own parcel there. However, they are proposing that the eastern parcel be reduced from 0.7 acres and 153 feet wide to just 0.48 acres and 104 feet wide. So the existing parcel is already well under the minimum size requirements of 3 acres and 300 foot width for the B2 zoning. So it would be considered to be a legal non-conforming parcel there. When we have legal non-conforming situations, the expectation is that they be brought closer to compliance when there's any change being made to them. But this would be being brought further from compliance because the size and the width would be shrinking there. So if they would like to have 2 parcels, then the property lines should be remaining where they are. One parcel shouldn't be reduced there. And we have to make sure that the site plan and building be able to fully fit onto its own parcel. So kind of two separate ones. Then the basic plan C. Bottom corner here. Basic plan C once again proposes to combine the parcels and the right of way into one parcel, but this time includes only the car wash. This is in line with the comments that we provided after the initial basic plan review. And it's the basic plan that staff would prefer moving forward since it's asking for the fewest exceptions and most closely follows our zoning requirements there. So the next step for the applicant after a basic site plan has been decided on is for them to submit all the required documents for the site plan review. It'd include things like a revised civil plan set, landscaping plan, photometric plan. Then I listed a number of those submittals there in the staff report, such as stormwater approval from the township engineer as well. So once again, the point of this meeting is to really have an introduction phase of the project and also provide some direction on which site plan should be pursued. So if there's any questions or requests of the applicant, this should be a good time to address those. And then the next phase will be the public hearing for the preliminary development plan review, which we'll schedule once the applicant provides the documents and information that we request. That's all I got.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
I have
Yes.
just one question. Plan A, can you go back to that and tell us where the original property lines are now between those two parcels?
Sure. I'll give an idea at least.
Yeah, just a.
Yeah, approximately where that property line would be. Right on kind of the edge of that car wash
where
building.
that is.
Mhm.
Member Moxley.
Yeah, Brian, I went out there today and walked the site. I noticed there's a significant grade difference between the west side and the east side. The motel is kind of down in a hole compared to Pizza Hut. And I'd say it's anywhere from 4.5 to 5 foot height difference between the east property line and the west property line. Have they attempted any civil engineering, looking at grades at this point that you're aware of to address this
I
grade
haven't
slope?
seen too much. I think the applicant, I think they are on the Zoom, so they should be able to answer some of those questions as well. They had one kind of preliminary plan set, civil plan set, but then since we kind of went back to the basic plans, I haven't seen specifics, but they might be able to speak a little bit more to that.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, Member Moxley. Member Nordick.
Yeah, Brian, it does, let me ask a question. Did they remove the vacuums at the end of the car wash?
And the plan A, yes, I believe so, yep.
The plan A and plan B, right?
Yep, yeah, that's correct. They had where
Okay.
there's that larger island, there were some vacuums there in the original.
And that
basic
was a
plan.
concern that we had, right, around traffic?
I think it was brought up by a couple members, yes.
Okay. So again, I ask, like, we have exceptions in the township. I don't think it's terribly unrealistic to have two buildings where there are two buildings. What is it just they're not following the rules?
Yeah, essentially, we don't really have any example where there's two different single-use businesses on the same parcel. I don't think we have a single example of that
Besides-
in the township.
What's there right now?
Well, those are two different parcels. so
Right, but
there's
we're
not-
talking about the same land. We're just
Well, when
trying
they're
to
combining the
utilize a single
parcel-
curb cut, right?
Yeah, but with combining the parcel, then you're kind of losing the ability to have a second building. It lets them have a larger car wash building and some extra space, but you lose the ability to have that second building. So from kind of a zoning perspective, the idea is if you want.
I mean, I can
buildings
appreciate
into
the
two
zoning, but
parcels.
there's two buildings today conducting very different business, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Member Rappin.
Brian, the difference between Plan A, where the vacuums are located near the bank, there's a 36-foot setback. In Plan C, is that addressed to correct that to 50 feet since they have more space?
I don't think it is. I think the vacuums are in the same position on all three plans, it looks like there.
But Plan C would allow them to shift that to provide 50 feet on all sides?
It could potentially, they have, more room to work with on the east side there. I don't know if they're, would maybe try to use some of that for stormwater retention or not. That's something they have to look at, but there might be some opportunity to move them there.
Member Merlin.
Two questions. The first is really sort of a policy question. I went around the site today as well, noticed the grade issue, but also noticed that we have two unused parcels there. How long have they been vacant?
I'm not, the motel is still in use, or was recently in use. The Pizza Hut, I believe, has been vacant for,
Motel still in use?
or recently.
At least recently it was, the motel uses, the motel, or the Pizza Hut's been vacant for
A while.
My only comment is that we want good development, whether this makes it or is, whether this satisfies that definition or not. I leave up to, I guess, this body as a whole, but it is, we shouldn't always stick absolutely to the rules if we have something that would substantially enhance what looks pretty awful right now. The second question I have is, you said C requires the fewest exceptions to the rules. What exceptions would it require?
For that one, similar exceptions to the other ones. For example, there's supposed to be a 50-foot setback for all vacuums at a car wash. And so they're still showing at least 2 vacuums within that 50 feet setback. The setback from the building from 28th Street is 94 feet, when typically it's 100 feet. That's not unusual for the other buildings in the PUD, but it would still be an exception. Those 2 are the only obvious ones at this point, and then we might find more when we dig into the preliminary plan review, but those are the 2 ones I noticed right now.
The second one was a 94 versus 100
Yes,
foot setback
Yep.
from 28th Street.
yes, yep, 100 foot front yard setback.
Are you good, Member Merlin?
Yeah.
All right. Member Nordic?
Just a quick follow-on question with the vacuums. If I think about the Mr. Car Wash, and I know that's been there when it was Genmar, like those vacuums are not nearly 50 feet from a setback perspective. And I can think of other car washes that are in the township. So is that something in the past that we've overlooked, or do you have any like history or context on those?
I'd imagine that the Mr. Car Wash has been there a long time.
Not the vacuums, though.
Not the
No, the
vacuum,
vacuums are relatively new.
Are they, do you know if those are legal, non-conforming, or what the process is? Does he need to be?
Oh, hold on. Steve, you gotta have a microphone to be official. You need to. You should know this.
We don't
Steve.
have
I
a
mean, you
microphone
have to
over
use
there,
the
sorry.
microphone.
Yeah, as far as I know, those vacuums have been there for a really long time. It's also in the B1 district, which does have different setbacks, does allow for things to be closer together. But like much of the area, especially right down there, maybe with the exception of, the Rite Aid or Walgreens, much of it is old, legal non-conforming down there,
Sure.
if not all of it. So, I mean, it's not surprising. I wouldn't, necessarily compare these two, that they'd be exactly the same because, we would expect that the newer stuff is complying with today's rules, not what was built
Sure.
however many
Well,
years
the
ago.
old car wash is that way, the one that's with the gas station. But the Mr. Car Wash, they just put all those vacuums in like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, on both sides, but
I think Joymar had one bank of vacuums is where Scott's going. And if you look at the Mr. And again, I'm not trying to, but I guess, Steve, my concern is Brian seems to be pretty strict to the book on this. And I worry that we might be limiting commerce when we have a developer that wants to build something that
Sure.
could be feasible. So that's my concern when I see
Sure.
2 buildings and we're saying, well, no, you can't have 2 buildings.
Yeah,
maybe the right way to look at this is because this is a PUD, we have the flexibility to reduce the setback on the vacuums, do we not?
you do.
If we chose to do that,
You
it's
do.
it's an option. It's not a deal breaker.
I guess the way I would summarize it is the concern that Brian and I have had is with all of the traffic flow, you introduce the car wash, which can have a significant amount of traffic at times. And then you introduce a drive-through coffee shop, which can have a significant amount of traffic at times. And you put those 2 uses together very closely when you already have substandard lots, you can tend to create some traffic jam up. So I agree. We want to see good new development and you guys are right. You'll be the ones that, decide if this is the right project. But our concern has been with the amount of traffic that those two types of uses together in close proximity can create some issues.
And so I've gone to a few of their car washes and they have a few that are jammed in. The Tommy and like specifically the one further down on 28th Street, they have figured out how to route traffic pretty darn fast for what it's worth. And they're running oil bays, glass repair, a lot of high traffic stuff through there. So they have shown that they have a propensity to route it through for what it's worth. But I understand your point of view on it.
Anyone else have any other comments of staff? Member Moxley?
Question for Brian, going back to the issue of the civil engineering study. One thing you might want to watch for is the erosion control and a detention basin. I guess I kind of like that option C only because there's an obvious space for it. There's a lot of paving on this site, a lot of paving. And it's all, from what I can see after touring the site, with the grades that are going to be involved, I believe it's all going to be running downhill to the east. So
Sure.
just kind of keep your eye open for that.
All right.
Any other members have comments?
I have one other question.
Yes, Member Deering.
So the setbacks are going to be, we would have to make exceptions for those regardless which option we.
Yep, they
Okay.
look like they're the same on each one.
So on
currently.
the first option, would the only other exception be adding in that second business?
From this perspective, I'd have to look at parking and landscaping requirements that we really drill down to in the next review. I guess one other thing to mention is that how the PUD is currently written, it doesn't allow fast food restaurants. So I think that's how we would have to consider a coffee shop. So that would have to be revisited too in the PUD language, and if that's something we want to change or not.
Would that only be though if they're preparing food there, right? Is that our definition of a restaurant? I think is that, because we ran into this with the Starbucks, if I'm not mistaken, they're not preparing food, so they were allowed to have a drive-through in the village, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right. I think we had that discussion there and with Culver's just down the street from this site. And really, the reason why that's important is because the calculation for parking is much higher for a fast food restaurant than it is for, I guess even just a drive-through, but just a restaurant. So I know for Culver's, we came to the conclusion after a lot of debate here that wasn't fast food because they did make your food, as you ordered it. And at Starbucks, I believe it was that they only had, a few little prepackaged, cookies and donuts and that sort of thing. So, but we debated both of those items, but really that comes down to parking and how many spaces they'd be required to have.
I have one more question.
Yes, Member Deering.
So if I recall from our discussions back in February, maybe the first time around, this is only a drive-through, correct? There wouldn't be much parking needed. Maybe for a few handful of employees, but there probably wouldn't be parking for people visiting.
I believe that's what they're
Coffee shop.
proposing is just drive-through. We'd still typically require some parking spots, but it doesn't seem like there's a sit-down component to it.
Anyone else have any questions of staff before we talk to the applicant? I'm sure they're jumping up and down with answers. Member Katzman.
My turn. So on Plan B, the basic plans, B, can you go through a little bit slower about how they want to slice that and it's legal non-conforming? 'Cause
Sure.
in my mind, that seemed to make sense. You could get the two parcels, we could kind of get past some of this stuff. We could
Yeah,
have two separate, but then you said it basically we're moving further away than we are. So if you can just go through that a little bit more, that'd
Yeah.
be helpful.
so we base minimum size and width on the underlying zoning, which is the B2 here. So it requires 3 acres and 300-foot width for that. And so we have a number of parcels on 28th Street that are legal non-conforming and much smaller than that. This one, as it currently is shown. I think it has 150-foot width or so. Yeah, it's currently 153 feet wide. So I mean, it comes up to about here or so. And they're proposing moving that property line over about 50 feet to make it a width of only 103 feet, and a little less than under an acre. And so the idea is we're trying to move away from smaller parcels like this and get closer to the minimum width in the area. So that's why we're trying to avoid shrinking property lines. You know, if someone came to us with this kind of lot split, just a lot split application, it's something that we typically wouldn't approve because they're moving away from the minimum lot size, is not getting closer to it.
Do you know the reason, Brian, for why they want to why they're putting the lot line there? Why are they adjusting the lot line? Is there not enough setback for the building to have it in its current location?
I believe it's not enough setback. Otherwise the lot line's coming right at the edge of the building, or it's right through the driveway here. You're basically, it's going right through, a needed component for the car wash. So I think they're trying to get it kind of equally in between the two and have correct buffer yards and setbacks between the two there. So otherwise there's just not enough room. I think it comes right about here. So they need to shrink the car wash in order to have that fit.
Is there an overlay in the packet that shows that or not?
I don't know if they have one in this one.
Overlay that shows the
The
current.
existing,
Yeah, it's right next to, in your packet, right next to Plan C. It shows the current.
Oh, on the back,
two
next
structures.
page, I think. In your packet.
which page is that? Chris, do you know?
It is page on my iPad 22.
22?
62.
Yes.
Should be the following page after these ones.
Page 22, and it shows the existing?
Yeah, there's 4 things, and that shows existing where you can see the Pizza Hut and the motel, and then next to it is Plan B.
Right, I was looking for an overlay with a car wash on it and
But
the
they're,
existing line.
they're next to each other, so kind of.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of slow sometimes. I'm picking up on it though. Okay. I'll try to speed up. All right. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions of staff at this time?
I do. Timmy?
Yes, Member Nordhook.
So my question is, on the west exit, it appears that there's several vacuums on both sides of that exit. Are those, you just pull up horizontal with 3 vacuums, or are people coming in on an angle parking to get to those vacuums?
I believe they're 90-degree, pull right into like a normal parking space, is my understanding.
How many feet are there? How wide is that to accommodate cars on each side?
It's our typical width for parking on each side, 24-foot width between the two, and then at least 18-foot parking spot spaces. So that's what we require for a normal, I guess, parking row with parking on each side.
So they're normal vehicle parking spaces.
Yeah,
They
pretty
just
much.
happen to have a vacuum in front of
The
them.
normal lane width in between the two, or I guess our minimum lane width between the two.
So again, we're gonna have cars backing out into basically a main exit
You could potentially.
on
yeah.
both sides into traffic.
Yeah.
Do we know how wide that is?
It says there that it's.
It is the 24 feet width, so 2 12-foot travel lanes going both directions between the 2 vacuum spaces on each side. So I guess, I don't know if it's that different than having 90-degree parking on each sides of it.
I'm just looking at it, if we've got cars on both sides of that exit
Mhm.
and they're backing out into the traffic. It doesn't look that wide to me. So that's a concern I have, and that's on all 3 planes.
Yeah.
It shows on there that it's 24 feet in the, I don't know, what is that, 10 parking spaces in next to the car wash?
Yeah, the cars are
Shows
about
that-
18 feet.
It shows the 18 feet for the car and then 24 feet for the aisleway and then 18 feet for the parking space above it. Isn't that what that is, Brian?
Yep, yeah,
That's
on
what-
it
Can you-
shows it on
can you-
basic plan A.
You probably can't zoom in much more than that though, can you? You know what? I have a tool. I can go like this.
Yeah, there you go. You can see
Hey,
it.
look at that. It's right. Oh, I'm in the wrong function. Boy, way to blow it. Right there. 24 foot, 18 foot, 18 foot. I'm not very good at math, but I think you get the idea. I gotta make the arrow go away. All right. Anyone else have questions of staff at this time? Yes, member Katzma. I think this is the longest we've ever talked before speaking with an applicant, but go ahead.
I'm not quite sure how to word this. So I'll just start and hopefully you'll understand. So on the proposed coffee shop, what if that coffee shop doesn't get enough business, that whoever Scooters, I think it was, decides to pull out? I'm just trying to think through down the line if they have to try to get another company in there, or or do we have to worry about them coming back and saying, well, let's readjust this because now we want to try fit this company on there, or you know where I'm kind of going with this. I don't know if there's a specific question. I guess I'm just asking, is there anything that you can think of that we need to think through from that end down the line if we propose or choose or whatever, one plant or the other?
I guess that would definitely be a concern moving forward if they try to get a new tenant in there, if they want to try to get a new building in there. There's obviously not a lot of room to try to do something else besides a very small building like that. And so I don't know if there's certain wording or conditions you could put in and the type of use, but I feel like it'd have to be very limiting to what could actually fit in that space there, or we don't want it to affect parking too much if it's a different use or things like that. So they'd probably have to come revisit and maybe do a whole nother PUD amendment than if it's a lot different than what they're trying to show here at least.
I think part of my concern is, if this goes through and Scooters gets in there, I hope it thrives. That'd be fantastic. I think I've seen several businesses kind of come in kind of through that corridor that haven't made it. And I guess my concern with it would just be looking at it going, okay, so we approve both or allow both. Car wash is going great. And then now we have this building that's abandoned, kind of gives a connotation being run down. I'm not saying that, but now we got to sign up, for lease or something. So I guess that's just kind of where I'm going with it. Not much of a question, but.
Thank you, member Katzma. Anyone else have any comments at this time? Questions? All
I'll
right.
just ask one more.
Oh, yes, member Merlin.
Do we, and forgive me if I didn't read this carefully, we have one applicant. Does he propose to have two different owners non-affiliated with one another? So the car wash is not responsible for that other building?
I believe that's the plan. It's a Tommy's car wash under Tommy's ownership and then a Scooter's coffee shop, which I don't know if they'd
So
be
your issue
leasing the
is
space or
very
something like
legit.
that.
Yeah.
Member Rapid.
I guess my only comment to add to that is I don't know if Plan B makes that worse or if Plan A or C makes that better. I guess I had the same thought, especially if they were to separate those. I don't know if that would mean anything differently for the PUD amendments later, one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't know if A or B would make a difference because either way, it's a very small site there and a small building that can fit. So we might run into issues in the future either way, potentially.
And maybe why staff is
Suggesting.
suggesting for Plan C. All right. Anyone else have any other questions or thoughts? All right, Stephanie, could we connect with the applicant at this time?
Yes, both the applicants are with us, Robert Morse and Doug Stallensberg.
Good evening. Can you guys hear us?
I can. Good evening. This is Robert. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Hey, just want to say thank you for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. As the woman just mentioned, Doug Stallsenberg from Excel Engineering is online with us too, and he'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So the last time we were here, member Nordyke pointed out that since there are two parcels being combined into one, and each parcel already has a building on it. And since the uses we are proposing are in line with what's really happening in that geographic area, there'd be some support for the coffee shop and car wash staying on the plan. But however, there were other members that thought the space was a little too dense for both uses as proposed that night. So we were encouraged to come back and present additional plans and studies showing how this could work. So that's what we're hoping to do tonight. And as you guys have discussed, our goal is really to focus on Plan A if we can. Can we get Plan A up on the screen?
It is.
Okay, awesome. You'll see we made several changes to this plan from the last time we were here. So as we talked about, or you guys talked about, you might remember our old plan had vacuums 38 feet from the exit of the wash. So you would drive out and then there was a bank of vacuums there. Well, we eliminated those vacuums altogether and we turned that into a nice landscape buffer. Then we removed the number of north and south driveways that we had on that plan. And so, and then we added a buffer yard to the east next to the electric cheetah. And basically by making these changes, we've simplified the traffic routing, we've eliminated conflicts, and we provided sufficient stacking where needed. So another point that we wanted to make is that the coffee shop typically is really busy in the morning, and that's the slowest time for our car wash. The peak hours for our car wash are in the afternoon going into the evening, and that's a slow time for the coffee shop. So these uses really go well together. And we also did a study, as was suggested. And here's what we found too. When you compare our PUD, what is currently approved on the existing Pizza Hut and motel site, we are actually requesting a land coverage reduction from 52% that's already approved now to 51%. We're asking for less land coverage than what's already currently approved. And when you compare our PUD to the other commercial PUDs in the township, our requested land coverage ratio is substantially less. So I know PUD 19, Thornapple Center was brought up, and that has 4 buildings on one 10.16 acre parcel, and that has a 78% land coverage ratio. And it also has less than 1 building per the 3 acre ratio that has been mentioned, and I understand that's probably a different zoning. PUD 32, that wasn't brought up, but that's Esplanade Center, and that has 2 buildings on it, and that's one 2.63 acre parcel, so it's less than 3 acres, 2 buildings, and that has a 75% land coverage ratio. Then we talked about consistency, so maybe it's a strip center. The Rebo development, PUD 80, that has the Culvers on it. It has a bank. That's where the Pizza Hut was. And then it has, it was approved for the multifamily in the back. So, looking at consistency, that has different uses than just, retail. And that was a PUD amendment. And that has a 71% land coverage ratio. So again, our coverage ratio is 51%, and that's what we're asking for. And that's less than what's already approved there now. And one of the things we specifically asked is if you as a planning commission have the authority to approve both buildings on the expanded PUD, and yes, you do. So just would ask, like it's been brought up tonight, that you consider that we're combining 2 parcels and 2 existing buildings into 1 parcel, and we're having that right of way vacated in the center, so that's adding to the size of the parcel. And there are 2 buildings on there now, and we're asking for less, coverage that's there. We have broad support from our neighbors there. It's a great use for the space. A lot of the parents, drop their kids off at that gymnastics, dance and swim center behind. They'll be able to come over and get a cup of coffee and wash their car. That old motel building, there was a massage parlor in there and some other savory businesses in there. We're cleaning that up. This is a significant investment for us, and we're hoping by having 2 compatible users, you have the coffee shop traffic in the morning that'll help drive some business to our car wash. The car wash will, drive business to the coffee shop. It is going to be under the same ownership. We own it. We're doing a land lease for the coffee shop. We're also friends with the Big B owners in the area. It could easily be a Big B site in that size footprint or real close to that. And just a couple other things. The Cascade Township Board is meeting this Wednesday to approve the right-of-way vacation. We have support from the Kent County Road Commission for that. And that's about all I have. So any questions at this time? And I know Doug is anxious to jump in, our civil engineer, and talk about some of those issues that you brought up as well.
All right, thank you. Let's let Doug jump in right now and hear from him.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can, Doug, thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess the first comment I'd like to make is if the 2 buildings concept, whether it's I guess it would be Plan B is approved, stormwater detention will be handled underground. I think someone on the Planning Commission made the comment about some concerns about shoehorning the detention pond in and creating an erosion situation. But if we do the second building, that space, obviously we don't have room then to put a surface pond, but instead we would do an underground detention, and we've done a preliminary design, and that all works out rather nicely. Second comment would be, I believe Brian received late today a letter from the Kent County Road Commission saying that they do support the vacation of that public street. Number 2, they're okay with our storm sewer outlet connecting to an existing catch basin in 28th Street. So we do have a drainage outlet. And then the third thing that the letter addresses is we're actually taking, we're eliminating one 28th Street curb cut, and we're moving a second one to align with a curb cut across the street, which is the ideal situation rather than having them staggered. And the road commission was very much in favor of doing that, eliminating one curb cut and aligning the second with across the street. Their only concern was the stacking of cars. They don't want them to be backing out into 28th Street. And a plan was provided that satisfied that that concern. And so that all 3 of those items have been addressed in that letter that I believe Brian has in his possession. I heard someone say that they were concerned about the two uses and creating increased congestion. I find it curious that one of the conditions that was brought to our attention by the planning department was to make sure that we provide cross access to the commercial property to the east, referred to as the electric cheetah. Right now the fence has been taken down, but up until a few weeks ago, there was a chained fence along that property line, and there was no traffic interconnection between the properties. And we've researched our title work, and there's no evidence of any easement on record that requires that. So it was purely a strong recommendation from the planning department to introduce another use into that same 28th Street curb cut. And so on one hand, we're feeling opposition to the second building on this, but at the same time, we're being told to make provisions for connection to the commercial building to the east, which, by the way, does create some grading issues. One of the other commissioners mentioned there was maybe a 4 to 5 foot grade difference from one side of the property to the other. I think it's closer to 7 or 8. But we have provided a plan that shows how that grade can be accomplished and make the connection to the electric cheetah if that is still a requirement.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I think.
Anyone else have any questions of Doug while we have him on, or the other applicant? Not yet? All right. Why don't you guys hang out on standby a minute, and we'll see if we have any questions here. We're going to talk a minute and work through this. I have a question of staff, and I don't know if this, unfortunately, I don't know where to share my screen, but maybe I can try and draw my question. So if I look at a plat map of this parcel, I see a right of way that is approximately in this area. Okay, kind of going like this. And then it shows the parcel right here owning 50 feet up like that. Whoops, not quite like that, but in a similar, yeah, I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like that. So my question is, it shows this area as right of way, and it shows this area as part of this parcel. Is that just an error in the plat map, or how does that how does that work with this?
So they're purchasing that small portion of the southern parcel.
Thank you for the clarification. All right. Anyone else have any thoughts here? Conversations, Member Moxley?
What is the difference between A and B?
Can you slide B up there so we can?
Yeah, just the fact that there's combining one parcel or they're having two parcels is really the only, everything else on there is they're showing as the same, but it's having one parcel or adjusting the lot line.
One
there and having
dividing
two.
line between the two.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Basically the same. Okay.
And the main hiccup is that they can't get the setback they need for the west building if they leave the parcels divided the way they currently set, correct?
Yeah.
And isn't there an advantage to having it one parcel under one ownership versus creating that very small parcel hanging separately, hanging out to the east?
Okay, and then the third option, of course, is to still have it be one parcel, but everybody's thirsty when they get their car washed, unless they roll the window down.
Open their sunroof.
Sunroof, yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this, you guys? Now's the time to bring them up. Member Catherine?
Kind of on my same thing. I'm still just have the concerns about the two different uses. The more I think about it, I just can't get over the idea that I feel like that could get abandoned, at some point, and then, the car wash is going good, even if it's the same owner. Obviously, they're going to want to try and make some money on it or do something with it. I'm still not comfortable with it, even if it's the same owner. I'm probably even less comfortable with B now thinking through it, because, even if they're split, now you're trying to shoehorn something else, and I'm just not that comfortable yet. So it's just more of a comment than a question.
Sure. Member Merlin?
I was just gonna say, I agree with Member Katzma. It's just that I think I would throw out B in a heartbeat and make it A or C. And the benefit of the issue is they have a blank spot now. If they do it with one use as in C, they've got that area to the east unused and sitting there. And so then the question is, what do they intend to do or not? If we go with A, there is a use for that. Is there any mechanism, I'm new here, if the building gets abandoned, let's say on that second use, could we force in some way, if they can't find a new tenant or use for it to be torn down?
So we've never done that before. The way the PUD ordinance would be written is you would be allowing, and I don't know the number, Brian knows it better than I do, a 900 square foot coffee shop drive-through, right? That's what you'd be permitting. So building goes vacant. Somebody else wanted to pick up that use to put another coffee shop in there, 900 square feet, they'd certainly be allowed to do that. As Brian mentioned earlier, if somebody wanted to change that, turn it into something else, they would be back in front of you with some sort of amendment request to do a new use there, or an expansion or reconfiguration or something like that. So,
but what happens if it just sits there for 3 years with nothing in it?
it sits there
For
for
3 years and we have an
nothing in it.
abandoned building on 28th Street.
Yep.
Unless it becomes a nuisance, at which point you could do something about it.
I suppose, and that's a really long road to get to that level. But I suppose that's possible.
Member Rappin?
I think my preference would be C, if anybody's asking.
Steve.
Just a single use on that site. If it were going to be option A, well, I agree. I would not like to entertain option B. If it was A, I would recommend or suggest that we try to remove every exception that we can. Looks like one of those are the vacuums on the east side within 36 feet. It looks like there's a 50-foot marking line that would take out 2 banks. To me, it seems like if we were going to go with A, we should try to do everything we can to remove any exception that's not necessary. That would be one that jumps out to me.
Thank you, Member Rappin. Member Moxley?
I agree with Ben. I prefer option C. I just think A is too congested.
Member Nordike?
Could we, and maybe this is for Steve, could we in fact ask the applicant if we were to approve option A to consent to some form of an agreement whereby if the building became vacant for a period of time, whatever we stipulate, that they would raise it? And I know you say that we haven't done it in the past. Does that preclude us from doing it now?
Sure, we can ask them. They can always volunteer.
That's what I mean, like if
Sure.
they're willing to,
Sure.
but if
The hard
again,
part is, trying to, what we kind of always talk about in here is the regulations have to be in relationship to what you're trying to, take care of. So, how would you develop this timeline, but I guess if they just volunteered, if we ever had it vacant for 18 months, we'd rip it down. Sure, I guess they could willingly volunteer.
I think that Tommy's is a big enough entity that I'm not worried. It doesn't concern me with their ability to knock it down. It's not a fly-by-night operation, and they've established themselves. I think they would have the ability should they choose to do that. But again, if other members have concerns with the traffic flow, that's something different. I know that, speak for you, Timmy, has concerns with the 3 vacuums in the southwest corner. Did I do that right? And so that may be something we want to ask the applicant as well. Would they consider removing them? That might alleviate your congestion issues. I don't know.
So it's one bank.
Yeah.
One bank.
All right, we'll go with member Carstens first.
I just have a question, just to clarify. The applicant mentioned when we're talking about the grading issue, that they were requested by the township to connect those businesses all together. Can somebody explain that to us?
So they were talking about that east access to the parcels to the east, and that's because the driveway that's currently there accesses those parcels from 28th Street. So the Electric Cheetah, I think there's a doctor's office there. There's one other driveway there, but it's very close to the light there. And so eliminating access to these existing businesses there could create some major issues of trying to turn onto 28th Street to turn into these properties from
That's
there.
how it's been, because
Yep.
there, like he said, there was a fence or a chain or something actually blocking that.
I don't think it was ever completely blocking those access. I've driven through there before from
It
motel
certainly
has
was.
to the south. Okay. But
was a
I've
nasty
driven
chain.
through there before too, but that's the concern is it is there and it can serve those businesses, and eliminating that would make it very difficult to get direct access to those businesses from 28th Street.
Member Merlin?
I just wanted to comment that on the notion of asking them to raise the building if it's vacant for a distinct period of time, what they're left with is option C.
Correct.
So we're giving them a chance to make option A work. And if they don't make it work, they're back to option C. So
All right, thank you for
Although
that.
I will say option C doesn't have that back driveway that cuts
Well,
those businesses.
you're right. And I was going to bring up the driveways here because I wanted your opinions on this, not necessarily staff, but the planning commission, because I'm looking at this and there's what is there, 6 ways to get in and out of this parcel, which seems like on this plan A, which seems like an awful lot to me. And I'm wondering if it's too many. I guess what I'm wondering is on that, I guess it'd be the southeast side, if one of those 2 should be maybe omitted, or maybe, I don't know, I'm just
I think the problem, and I'm
curious.
saying what I thought they said last time was the coffee shop traffic, but I guess that does route back around, so that doesn't.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if that east exit to the south or the south exit, if one of those 2 is maybe not necessarily needed. But I don't know, that might also cause a difficulty with any cross-traffic agreement they're trying to work
Yeah.
out.
I'll also make a quick note on that because there is that existing south access, which has been chained off at times too. So we'd mentioned that to them before, having cross access. They can access that from kind of the service drive that goes around and then to the south. So some things we mentioned before, exactly if you think it's too much on there. I think that drive to the east is the very important one, the northeast that accesses Electric Cheetah and things like those. So that one I highly recommend keeping at least.
Was the driveway on the southeast, didn't they say they were just going to keep that as one-way traffic? Because the neighbors to the south didn't want that to be two-way as well.
Initially, but on this plan, it does show it as 2-way traffic. And I'm just wondering if you eliminated both those exits, do you eliminate some congestion here? People, I don't know. cutting through, or is that not a benefit? I'm just floating an idea here, that's all. Just for
I just
conversation's
think
sake.
people are gonna come in and there's too many ways. There's gonna be some do not enter because you can't go into the coffee shop that way. I do think there's almost too many options for people to cut through or go.
I mean, I know cross flow between parcels is usually a good thing because then you don't have to go out to 28th Street. So I understand the ideas here. I'm just. I wanted to add to the confusion of the evening because I didn't think I had done enough of that already. Yes,
I would just
Member
note that
Ackman.
the southwest corner right now, the only way that you'd be able to use that, that entry would be from the rear of the building, like for Cheetah, where there is no access from behind, only from 28th Street. So that would end up being a long, you'd have to drive around that building to get to that back side. So I don't think you would be introducing much entry traffic from that corner in particular. That wasn't from that development to the south.
Sure. Okay. All right. Anyone else have any other conversation here to add to this? We have we have 10 items on here that staff has asked us to review related to this. And so I just want to remind all of you.
Those are
that
things we'd be reviewing at the next stage, the
Sure.
preliminary plan approval. So,
Okay.
yeah, I just want to follow up and say we do kind of want to give them some direction of whether it's A or C.
Right.
And then going back to A, like I mentioned before, this is something we haven't had before of two businesses on one parcel. So we want to be specific in our reasoning of why it's allowed in this instance. So two restaurants can't come to us next month and say, well, these guys are doing it. How come we can't have two businesses on a parcel? So just being clear on the direction that we're going.
So with that, do we want to, what is the feel of the room here? A, C, B, D? What are we? Gonna come up with a suggestion here. Remember Nordyke.
Could we ask the applicant if they would entertain entering into an agreement whereby they would raise the building after a period of time, like, because they could come, that at least would be good to be, if they wouldn't, then I think that is a different decision here.
Stephanie, could you have the applicant respond to Member Nordyke's question or have them repeated if needed?
They're still on.
Okay.
Hi, it's Robert. Yes, we'd be happy to sign that agreement. And like it was mentioned, we're making a pretty significant investment here. And we certainly would have the wherewithal to remove that building. And we would want to, rather than having an abandoned building next to our wash. And so absolutely, we'd make that commitment.
Thank you. Appreciate that information. Any other, yes?
For the applicant too, would they consider removing the southwest bank of vacuums?
Southeast.
So east or west? Or was the west?
The southwest, you have 6 vacuums, 3 on each side of the exit.
The only problem that we would have there is we just don't want to underserve the community. And typically we want 15 vacuums and we're already down from that. And so that would be difficult to remove those vacuums because we would be underserving the community based on our experience.
Member Nordyke, just to float an idea here. What if those 3 vacuums were moved to the east end of that bank of parking? Does that make you more comfortable if they moved east?
I don't know if that helps us.
I think it's vacuums on both sides is the concern.
Yeah.
Can I just say, we do have many locations that have that same setup. I built the Tommy's in Kentwood on 44th and Breton and remodeled that whole center there. And the distance between the vacuums and the parking next to the strip center is actually less than that. And we have not had issues at that site nor at other sites that have a very similar setup. That's been our experience.
Might be time for a field trip. Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts here? I think based on what I'm hearing, I'm comfortable with an A with an option to move to a C. That's kind of my direction here, what I'm thinking, but I don't want to speak for everybody. So is that a hand raise or a?
I'll give an alternative. I
Member Rappin.
would still be more comfortable with option C. I think option C gives plenty of space to resolve more room for vacuums. They could easily move those with the space they have if they did not put the coffee shop in. As much as I love coffee, I'm still feeling like C is the best use personally.
I concur.
Okay, we have 2 for C,
A going to C.
A going to C. So it's a
No,
tie.
no, I meant,
2 to 2.
I meant, yes, I'm with you.
Okay, all right, okay. Me too. All right. Member Katzma. What are we thinking?
Oh, tough. I would entertain a with that option. You know, if it, I just don't want the abandoned building. So if that was something, then I would consider it.
Okay. Member Deering.
Sure, I see no problem with A moving to C. I like that option. I appreciate the fact that they reworked their plans to make the traffic flow better around the coffee shop and around the car wash. And I like the fact that they're willing to raise the building if it sits abandoned for a while. So that they're working with us, and based on what's there now, I think this is going to look so much better. It's, based on the area, I don't see the coffee shop failing. So I'd like to give them the opportunity to make a go of it and have it be successful.
All right. I don't know if I even need to ask, but I'm going to. Trustee Nordhook, which way are you leaning? C. C. And member Nordike.
I'm A to C. And Brian, I hear you. I think it's, if 2 restaurants came and there were 2 restaurants or 2 buildings of different use today, I think that for me is enough. So I think that would be my indication as to why we did it, so that it could be explained to others. So I'm A to C as well.
I've tested my math here. Oh, yes, member Rappin.
I just want to clarify, we have had a coffee shop fail on the other side of the road was it previously a Taco Bell or Taco Place, and then it was a Dunkin' Donuts and that failed. So that is partly my concern for having 2 uses on that space. I just think it's best to have C. So just to give more clarification on my position.
Okay, so if my indicator of which way the wind is blowing is accurate, 6 of you are comfortable with A to C, and 3 of you want to just cut right to the chase and do basic plan C. Right? Okay, does anyone have any other thoughts on this? Any other comments, discussion? Grant Hilbrand, do you have any anything else you need from us or Mr. Peterson? We're good here. We've given everybody the information they need. I think that is the most time we've ever spent in a basic plan review. So hopefully we've been pretty thorough. With that, thank you for joining us, Bob and Doug. And we will move on to Article 7, which is case number 21-3636 Round Hill at 3000 Thorn Hills. Familiar site for some of us, maybe not so familiar for some others.
I guess I have the easy one tonight. I thought it was going to be the other way around.
Certainly, certainly.
Not done.
A nice young.
So as you mentioned, and it's already been talked about, this is basic plan review. So no notices have gone out. That's the next stage of the process. So our public hearing happens at the preliminary review. So that will happen next. So I know we just spent a lot of time working on a lot of details for the car wash. Really, we tried to just use the basic plan review to introduce the project to you. So you can hear what the applicant wants to do, and then it's your opportunity to tell them and staff, I guess, what information that you think you need in order to move forward. So really, that's what basic plan review is for. So we don't want to get
into a lot of detail. That's not the point of this tonight. But the Round Hill Amendment, so just real briefly, Round Hill is the 10-unit subdivision that was built a couple years ago. And as all of you, I think all of you know, we went through quite a lengthy process a couple years ago to do some amendments to the project, really nailed down some details for things that the developer had to do. And one of the results of that 2019 amendment was that there was to be nothing placed in the, including retaining walls. We don't take setbacks for retaining walls. I know Mr. Rhodey made that comment. We will, I guess, continue to agree to disagree on that, but we simply don't take setbacks for retaining walls. But one of the things we did in the 2019 amendments is we said nothing could be put in the required 25-foot setback for Round Hill to make sure that those setbacks were protected, including, we specifically included retaining walls. So that other than the large retaining wall on the south side of the site that was approved as part of the project. So the applicant came forward with a proposed amendment. They would like to add a pool. And in order to do that, they have to put in the retaining wall. That north side of the site has that slope that runs down to these homes. In order to fit the pool in there, you really need to have the retaining wall. And that is within the 25-foot setback. Normal subdivisions, you are allowed to have a pool as close as 10 feet to a property line. That's measured to the water, not to any kind of concrete decking around there, but that's measured to the water. Obviously, that's what they are proposing to do, is have a 10-foot setback for a pool, but it's simply in the current PUD language, not permitted because it's inside that 25-foot rear yard setback. So that is what they are asking for. That is the amendment that they would like to proceed with. Just a little bit more history on it. As some of you might remember, the original project actually had a retaining wall along the north side of the project that kind of wrapped around all of those sites. They took that out, if you remember, in 2019 as part of that amendment. And as a result, of course, the stormwater system was designed accordingly. So, and what we have out there has been complied with. So all of the stormwater system is in the way it's supposed to be in. I was out there with the township engineer just a week or so ago to kind of check on everything. And it's all in the way it's supposed to be in. One of the things that I've asked for, the item that I've asked for in my report is, this is what is in your packet, is this plan for the house with the pool. I think we really need to see a full plan for the entire subdivision so our engineer can evaluate the impact that this would have on the approved stormwater plan. So I don't think just this one lot is going to be good enough for us to be able to make that evaluation. So before we move forward, in order to schedule that public hearing, I'm asking that we get that full site plan with the changes that they want to make as a result of this change, so our engineer can evaluate this change. Does that make sense?
Yes. Are there any questions of staff? Member Nordic, we'll start over there.
Steve, since we made the 2019 amendment, have you issued any citations to Round Hill?
We have not. We have not. We spent a lot of time out there during construction. If you remember, we've had quite a few bonds in place. One of them was for, we basically sat an inspector out there to watch that the wall get constructed. It was a long, hard process, but no, we did not have to issue any citations.
And did the builder hit every timeline that they agreed to?
My answer is yes, I believe they hit every timeline. But if you remember, there was also a couple, you can't do that before you finish this. And so there was a few things that we waited on, but they were able to accomplish all of those.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Moxley.
Yeah, Steve, I am concerned about the retaining wall design, the way it's shown. First of all, you really can't tell how high it is. And I suspect it's because it may be stepped. But I see the grade sloping down to the front edge of that retaining wall. When water comes down that hill from grade 755 to about 750, it's just gonna wash right over that, the top of that wall and go right into the pool. That sound like a possibility to you?
I guess I'd say it's hard for me to tell really right now. I would like to see these full plans and let our engineer take a look at that.
Typically, I would raise the retaining wall high enough, you create a little swale
Sure.
behind the front edge to divert that water away so it isn't just washing over the retaining wall.
Like, I guess my response is I would like to see what their entire plan is to be
Yeah.
able to evaluate.
I agree.
Member Merlin.
As you said, they had a retaining wall in on the north side.
On the south side.
Well, no, they have a retaining wall now on the south side.
Right.
That's the one they didn't want to put in 2 years ago. They had a retaining wall on the north side in 2016. They took it out in 2019. Is this request from one owner in particular because of what he wants to do? Or are we going to have this applicant who has, let's say at best, a checkered history coming at us every year to rethink the detailed design plan that he had the prior year?
That's probably a better question for the applicant.
I mean, if this was part of the sale of this particular lot, every owner or every person who looked at this PUD knew the 25-foot setback rule or prohibition that was in there. And so 18 months after agreeing to that, he's coming back and asking for an exception to that. I'd like to hear from him as well as to whether lots 1, 2, and 3 are sold and whether we're just going to get every year or so another amendment.
The lot next to it, lot 3, is sold and is occupied. But
And he doesn't need a
You'll have an opportunity to ask the applicant these questions.
questions. Okay,
Yep, we'll do that right after we ask Steve.
yeah, I'm not bitching at you, Steve, on this one. It's
not at this one. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any other questions of staff before I ask mine? Anyone? All right, Steve, do you know how far the house is from the back lot line on that nearest corner approximately?
Probably 30 feet.
Okay,
I mean,
and
you can see here, the pool is set back 10 feet.
I see that.
Pool is 14 feet.
wide.
So there-
Okay.
that gets you your 25. So
Yeah, yeah.
maybe that corner is
Okay.
30 something.
How far? Do we have a rule as to how far a pool has to be from a building or structure?
No.
So in theory, the pool could be very close to the house if
Sure.
somebody wanted to do that. I'm
Yeah.
not, saying I'm necessarily
Yeah.
advocating that. I'm just asking if there's a distance requirement between the two. Okay, and then what is the side yard setback requirement for a pool?
10 feet.
10 feet? Okay. The reason I'm asking is because this is kind of a pie-shaped lot and there's a bit of space to the side there, but.
10 feet to the
Else?
property lines, and you can't have it in the front yard is what the setback requirements are for pool.
Okay, thank you. Member Rappin?
I think walking the site, and maybe this is a question for the builder, it seems like it's in the only spot it could be in as drawn, given some of the infrastructure for the rainwater and there's a little drain to the east side of the house, and there's the little, there's a steel water catch there too.
I'm not trying to re-engineer anything.
Okay.
I'm just simply trying to learn. So, anyone else have any other questions of staff before we hear from the applicant? All right. Tom, would you like to come up and introduce yourself, name and address, and answer some questions for us?
Yeah, I'm Tom Giusti. I am the builder and developer. I'm proposing the retaining wall within the setback, like it is on the south side. There was no problem for it to be 3 foot from the property line there, and it worked out great. And as everybody knows, it was very extensive. We spent a lot of money doing it to do it right. MTC did all the inspections, and there was never any problems. It was approved originally on the north side, but it wasn't necessary at that point. Like Steve said, unit 3 is already sold, and really just unit 3 and 4 are the units that have the higher slope from the township's property down to our property. There's probably a 6 foot drop if we go to the property line and measure that at its highest point. So unless somebody wants like the slope down and, you know, coming into their backyard, then, you know, that's great, which 3 didn't have a problem with. There's catch basins, you know, all along the back there. There was some, you know, mention of the drainage from behind the wall. There's crushed stone on the back. It has bleeders that go through, and everything goes to the catch basins. And that's pretty standard. Again, like I said, it was approved on the front end before. We didn't think it was necessary, so we were asked to take it off of the plan when we submitted for our amendment to the other PUD. But I think in general, anybody that was, you know, on any of the lots, if they had their, you know, druthers, they would, if they wanted a pool. I mean, we could have an issue on a couple of the others that if they did encroach into the 25-foot setback. Currently now the zoning is 10 foot on all sides, rear and side yard. Yeah, 10 feet. So, yeah, that's, you know, that's basically, it's pretty cut and dry as far as, like I said, the drawing shows where the retaining wall would be, where the pool would be, our drainage heading, you know, heading to the furthest east catch basin, which is outside also of the retaining wall. So anything coming past that at that 750 mark would come around, and we grade it towards the catch basin there. So again, like I said, there's no issue on unit 5 or 3. This gentleman had made mention of unit 1 or 2. We don't have the elevation changes on 1 and 2 where it would, you know, be an issue where we'd need that. So
All right, thank you.
that's basically it.
Does anyone have any questions of the applicant while he's up? Thank you, Scott. Oh, Member Merlin.
Does unit 3 owner have any problems with this retaining wall and the fork in it that goes?
Wendy, can you move the mic a little so we can hear?
I'm
you
sorry.
better? There we go.
Does the owner of unit 3 have any problem with this wall and its design, which seems likely to push water into his side yard as well?
Not that I know of.
Has he been talked to?
Yeah. He's they're both doing fences. He's doing this gentleman on unit 4 wants to do, obviously has to do a fence for his pool, but also unit 3 is doing a fence, but they're still at the edge there. They have a catch basin. We have catch basins behind every unit. There's a catch basin right there at 3.
I'm gonna stop you a second. Can you slide that
Oops,
back?
sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
You kind of, yeah.
I'm trying to talk
Now
to the left and
Yeah,
point to the right.
Yeah, I know it's difficult.
Sorry about that. So yeah, any of this drainage would come down and be forced into this catch basin here on unit 3. But to answer your question, no, I don't. I'm not aware of it. We've talked about, you know, he's doing a pool, he's doing a fence, he's doing a retaining wall, but other than that, you know, he's never mentioned anything.
Any member Moxley?
Yeah, Tom is, I expressed a concern earlier about the grade coming down and running right to the very tip of the retaining wall. Is there some way you could create a swale to divert the water to either side to get it away from the face of the retaining wall? So it isn't just washing over that and going right into the pool.
Absolutely, yeah. The wall could be just a little bit higher, and then we can, like you said, we could have a swale in there that directs us to the right or left to go to the catch basin.
That's pretty much the way the one on the other side works.
Correct.
On the south side.
Yeah.
It's much better.
Yep.
Okay.
And we have at the back of Unit 3 behind their house, we have,
You gotta slide it over again.
oops, sorry. Well,
It's
it's
okay.
not, actually 3 is not even on this drawing, but behind 3, you could see the corner there under that 745. There's a catch basin there, and there's a catch basin just inside Unit 2, which we have a gravel bed that catches, all of our rainwater from
Right.
the township property and goes to the left and to the right into
I
those
s-
catch basins.
I saw that when I made my site visit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Member Berlin. Oh, wait, member Nordhook beat you to the punch. Then we'll come back to you.
Tom, I have concerns with just a retaining wall going in behind lot 4. I was very active in watching how the original plot went in with the retaining walls and all of the conditions that were in there, and how you basically didn't want to do what was required of you in that plat. And now we're coming in with a,
What are you making reference to that I didn't want to do what I wanted to do?
I don't know, a 15-foot high retaining wall. We wound up in a lawsuit over that.
Who's we?
Township.
Okay, yeah, I didn't agree with that at all. I didn't think it was necessary. I think we could have done a lot of,
I just want to
I
make
just
sure
think
that
we
if we're
could
going
have done a
into
lot of different
this,
things to do it more, to do a better wall. And
Well-
my idea was shot down, and Mr. Rhodey got what he wanted, and we did it by the letter of the law.
okay,
we did not.
but my concern here is now we're going back and opening this up, knowing what the rules were, how they're laid out. And now we want to open that up for a pool and a new wall that we're not sure how tall it's going to be. I've got lot 3, lot 5. I don't know how the water's going to run off that. I don't know how tall that wall is going to be. And with the history of this, I'm not excited about opening this up at all. But if we do, I'm definitely going to want an owner's rep to watch how this goes and that all of the conditions are met. Because it didn't work good last time on the honor system.
As far as, can you say again, what didn't work good on the honor system?
The process didn't work well on the honor system last time. So
Well,
I want an owner's
there
rep
was a little bit
involved
more
this time.
There was a little bit more to it than just what was on the surface. I mean, Mr. Rhodey and I went back and forth about what Steve had mentioned about setbacks and retaining walls. It was approved to be where it was supposed to be. And Mr. Rhodey threatened to sue me at every juncture of the deal. Even though it was approved by the township and approved by the board, that south retaining wall. But I was trying to be compliant with the neighbor to do what he wanted to try to suffice him to, and to try to get along. And
I'm happy.
we were just butting heads all the time. And it comes to, we're like, I got a gun to my head. Now all of a sudden he sues me, and the township makes me, do what I got to do. And we did it. And we did it very well.
Okay, personally, I'm opposed to doing anything with the setbacks. I don't want nothing done there. But if we are going to open the board, I want an owner's rep to watch and make sure that every step is being.
What are
done
you
properly.
referring to as an owner's
I want a
rep?
third-party business to come in and monitor every step of this approval if it happens that way. If the board approves this, I want somebody outside of our staff to come in and represent this township to be sure that these conditions are being met, whatever conditions it is that the board puts on.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Member Nordhook. All right, Member Merlin, you had something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it was actually, I agree with Member Nordhook, but when I look at on the east side, that angle sends the water to, where does that water go? I don't see a storm sewer or a storm drain between units 4 and 5. I see one behind the wall.
Steve.
Yeah, so let me just remind you, the reason why you don't see that is this is basic plan review. So one of the items that I've asked for the developer to provide is those set of detailed drawings so we can do all that evaluation. I guess I don't want you to get too lost in these details. I would say make the comment, yeah, we need to see these detailed engineering plans because we don't know where the water is going.
I hate to have it go back on Mr. Rohde's property again.
We need the plans to be able to evaluate that. I agree 100%, but I don't think, this isn't the right
Time to have that.
meeting to,
Yeah.
be debating about the details of the plans.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any comments? Like Member Nordic?
Hey, Tom, you heard the comment that Mark made about the guardrail. I don't know if that's a requirement or not. Do you have any, why he's here, you're here. Do you have a comment to that?
I'm not sure what the exact requirements. Mr. Rohde and I had talked about maybe putting some head, you're shaking your head. No, Miss Rohde was.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, I know how the conversation went. Mr. Rohde and I had it, and he had just mentioned, hey, maybe you put some hedges there that are thorny of some sort, so nobody could get to the edge. Well, it's private property. Nobody should really be in there. We have gates, we
Sure.
watch it very carefully. There's actually security inside, that comes in and out to watch. We don't let people just like float around. If that's a requirement, then it's a requirement.
No,
We'll
I'm
we'll
asking
comply with it.
if it's your intention. Some member of the public made a comment, so I'm just trying to get.
Well, it's our
context and
intention,
clarification.
once, if we have a new homeowner at those couple of units, which is 5 and 6.
Yep.
We're gonna do everything we can to protect them from whatever. And we're gonna have landscaping and everything just to put something in. I mean, at this point, we haven't done anything. No, we have not.
Okay, and it, depending on the homeowner, will be.
Correct.
The decision will be made on what to do with that.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you bet.
Member Merlin?
What we have here are 10 units, all of which have a 25-foot setback requirement where nothing can be put into them. And even the ones on the south side, that 25-foot setback comes awfully close to the house as well.
It does.
So are we, again, this goes to what are your real plans with regard to you're selling parcels that have essentially no backyard on which structures can be put easily of any sort, be they pools, walls, whatever. So do you have any plan in mind right now to change that? Because the last time you gave us detailed plans in 2016, you didn't seem to want to comply with them.
In reference to what?
The south retaining wall.
It wasn't that I didn't want to comply with it. The issue was that Mr. Rohde was threatening to sue me if I put the retaining wall where the township approved me to put it, period. And I didn't want to go into a big legal battle with the neighbor over something. I was trying to do it peacefully, and he didn't want to make it happen.
I think we've made this part fairly clear. Are you?
I'm fine.
Okay, all right. I think we're gonna just keep moving here. I don't wanna.
We did spend
memory
like,
lane
we
too
did
many
spend,
times the
we
same
did spend
night.
an hour and something with the car wash.
Right, and I want to stick with.
Not that I want to stay
substance.
here any longer than I have to.
I understand, but I want to stick with the substance of this. Not
That's fine. Well,
not-
he had a valid
not
question.
the
And that's,
history.
No, but I was just asking
Right.
More fundamental question is lots 1 through 10.
No, well, if someone, wanted to do, we're not representing anything to anybody, saying that you could do this, you could do that, no
But
problems.
it's your decision because it's not a potential buyer's decision that's causing this pool and retaining wall in 4.
No, that is the buyer's decision, yes.
Okay, that's a buyer's decision.
Yes. The buyer wanted to do a pool in the back and he wanted to utilize all of his property. The difference in elevation from the township property by the library is over 6 feet. So that's what we were trying to do. We did it on the south side. Everything was fine. We did it for him. I don't know why we wouldn't do it to the north side, but that's up to you guys.
Any other questions of the applicant while he's standing? Thank you, Tom.
I'm done.
Well,
That's
for
it?
now, it doesn't
Okay.
mean we won't call you back up.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Actually, I could probably add a question up there if you want.
Go ahead.
Didn't get off
So
that easy.
yep, so we've got, let's see if I can change my tool here. Trying to use.
No,
the
are we
tools
really
out
done
the
or are you
back.
going to ask me a question?
Right here, that catch basin, I just put the arrow next to.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just throwing something out here. Have you talked to the proposed buyer about the possibility of if the pool was to be, that catch basin was to move and the pool was to be in that type of a configuration? And then I believe they wouldn't need a retaining wall or a PUD amendment to build the pool. Am I mistaken there, staff, or can I get a nod if you think I'm on the right track, if they're 10 feet off? And I mean, if they had to build a retaining wall and it was, well, it has to be 25 feet from the rear, right?
Right, it'd have to be at least 25 feet out of the rear to avoid the PUD amendment, but you're right, if you found a spot, over in the side yard that was still 10 feet off of the side property line, that would be.
Right, so I'd probably
that would
look
be
more like
permitted.
this.
That is a very good question.
I'm not an
and-
engineer, but maybe they could make it a square pool if they, but yeah.
Again, though, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, the back corner of the house, if we do it a straight line, we can't be in front of that, or we can't be in front of the front corner of the house?
The front corner.
Front corner, okay.
Yeah, so. Everything from the pen to the road is the front, so you can be behind that line, that's still considered your side yard of the house, so you could go as close as the front corner of the house.
So I mean, in theory, you could put the pool right here. Maybe not quite right there, but
Close.
yeah.
So
close.
you're a pool designer now. Hey, no.
I'm just having fun with the tools.
Yeah, that was nice. No, that's a fair question. And
Okay,
I would be fine
I'm
with
just-
something to that nature, but he wants it to see it out his back.
I understand. I would want it there too, but sitting on this side of the desk, I would tell you that I personally am not very comfortable with what's being proposed. In a sense, because of what I'm hearing from Mr. Merlin is one thing is I don't want to open up a Pandora's box where we're getting these requests on every lot. When we went through this process in 2019, we worked very carefully to make sure that the PUD amendment was hopefully the last PUD amendment for this
Trust me,
area. And I know you know that, and I understand you're here on more on the buyer's behalf, but I guess in my mind, I want to explore all options to avoid amending the PUD. That's just my take, and I know this is basic, but I wanted to give you the direction of the way the wind's blowing in my perspective.
So this would be just solely for unit 4, not if we're going to amend the PUD, wouldn't the PUD be amended for the entire?
Well, it would be amended to show this change for unit 4. That doesn't mean that this change follows each lot, but what I'm saying is that if we, I just.
Well, what if I had an individual on lot 9 that wanted a pool? And it got into, and encroached in the setback.
And that concerns me. I don't want to get into a chain reaction where everybody's asking for an amendment for pool or an amendment for
Mhm.
retaining wall or a greenhouse or.
Just so I'm clear, this is strictly for unit 4.
Right. That's right. It's just for unit 4.
Okay. Very good. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments to make or thoughts on this?
Yes, I just have one for staff. I don't know who best to answer. If I heard it correct on the front, in the presentation, we have other situations where retaining wall or something, maybe it's just this project. Is there other projects that we could point to that the retaining wall encroaches or something like that? Because that's part of the issue, right? It's the retaining walls within the 25-foot setback.
I think that's the concern that the neighbor has, is that the retaining wall is in the setback. And Steve's perspective was that anywhere else, retaining walls can be in the setback, correct?
Yeah, we simply don't take setbacks for retaining walls, but because of all of the problems that we have with the development, we wanted to make sure that the plan that you were approving in 2019 was the plan that they had to do. So even though we don't take setbacks for things like retaining walls, we wanted to make sure that nothing was put in that 25-foot setback area. For instance, pools are allowed to be 10 feet away, but we didn't even want a pool in that 25-foot because we said nothing would go in there. So we were trying to make sure, we were trying to, make that PUD ordinance as clear as possible about what could and what couldn't happen out there.
So it was clear and this kind of muddies it.
I think it's crystal clear about what is in the current PUD ordinance,
Thank you.
which is why they're here.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Member Katzma. Member Nordike, I saw your hand up there.
One more, I promise. So, not to put words in your mouth, but I will. We have staff comments, which are typical of a preliminary review. Is it fair to say that staff's recommendation will be to not approve this because of what we did in 2019 as it relates to not putting anything in those 25-foot setbacks?
Normally, I'd say it's a fair question. I'd say that right now isn't a fair question.
Okay.
I think we need, in order for staff to make that recommendation, we need to see these plans, these detailed plans.
It's the greatest wall in the world. Are you going?
Am I concerned? Yep, I'm concerned.
Yeah. So it's fair to say that there's a high likelihood that staff would recommend not to approve this with the greatest wall. Sounds like somebody ever built.
Yeah, I guess, it's not so much whether it's the wall or the pool.
Yeah.
We're just
It's
concerned
just the
about
25 feet.
We just did this. We want to make sure, I want to see these engineering plans so we can see what type of impact it has on the whole design of the stormwater system.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
All right, Member Merlin. Well, Mr. Gusti, I'll let you make one comment here real quick, and then I'll jump over to. If you have something to add to that real fast.
So I understand what Mr. Peterson's saying about seeing further details, but
Sure.
the issue I have is, why is it okay for us to do it on the south side and it's not on the north now? I mean, we went through all this, we went through all the expense and all the agony. We all have sat through this and done this, and I've had to take the brunt of it. So now all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, you could do it for him, but you can't do it for anybody else. I mean, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, but that's all I got to say.
Okay. I was gonna say, if the wall had been in the 19 plan, if it hadn't been removed from the 16 plan or from the 19 plan, like it was in the 16 plan, then this wouldn't be as much of an issue because the wall would already be there. So I wouldn't be so quick to say that it was okay for him, but not, it's okay on the south side, but not on the north side. That's my take. All right.
Fair enough.
Member Merlin.
Okay, until that last comment, I was just going to say that I would be opposed just because of the issue of the precedent setting because I see every parcel in this having the same problem.
That's what I was getting
Right,
at.
it is identical to yours. I also would say the difference between the north and the south is that the south took litigation by someone to get that wall built. And then there was a long, in-depth negotiation for that 2019 PUD.
I don't know that the litigation had motivation behind that as much as the amendment, but I'm not.
Well,
From my perspective, I wasn't involved in litigation, but I was involved in the amendment. So I would say that
I mean, I see very rarely a city or a township sued with a writ of mandamus to force it to enforce its own ordinances. Because that south wall was very clear in the ordinance in 2016,
As was the north.
as was the north.
Thank you. Member Katz?
Just a general comment. I like your thinking of potentially moving the catch basin. Kind of what I gathered, right? Moving catch
Right.
basin as a potential alternative. And then it all kind of swings back into just seeing the detailed view with the engineering to see how it all works. So I think that's a good idea to see it all.
I guess, yeah, because my thought on this is, as Mr. Member Merlin said a moment ago, that you don't want to set a situation up where we're getting this request on every lot that goes up for sale. And I think that if that lot has the land available to accommodate what they want, maybe not in the spot they want, then I am less likely to amend things, you know, I mean, it's, if you have space to build a garage and you don't need to get a, you know, and I'm not, yeah, I don't want to go too in depth here. So any other comments? Questions?
Just would
Yes.
like to clarify for Scott, that the engineering that you're asking for would not be necessary if the pool were moved to the side yard. That was strictly related to the retaining wall. Or would we still, are you still seeking that if the builder could put the pool in a spot that did not fall in that 25-foot setback?
Well, if they could put the pool in a spot without needing the retaining wall or the pool in that 25-foot setback, yeah, we wouldn't be here for a PUD amendment. If they had to move a catch basin over a couple feet to accommodate, some sort of redesign, those catch basins are in there to basically capture the gutter of the house. So those aren't part of the, I guess what I'll call the big infrastructure. We certainly would still have our township engineer, look at that to make sure that whatever, if it had to get moved for something like that, but I would consider that to be a very minor, administrative change. They still have to apply for that and give us plans, but it wouldn't be in front of you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Then does anybody else have a question here? No? Then I guess at that, does anybody have anything that they would want to require from the applicant before moving to the preliminary development plan review, other than the conditions set forth by staff that, or recommendations, I should say, not conditions, that they want complete engineering plans? I think we've definitely had an indication that we want that. And
The owner's rep.
and there was a recommendation for an owner's rep. So that would be a condition 3, I guess, is that we would want to see that included in their package. And then in the second one here, Steve, you have, I just want to make sure we're clear on all this, is approval for the request from other owners in the neighborhood that they approve of this. Is that, am I missing anything? Just for a recap here for staff to make sure we're on the right track. I'm seeing no comments from anyone. Member Nordic?
I don't know that I could approve this because I feel like it's fair to the applicant to tell him this now so he doesn't go through all of this work. And I don't know if I'm in the minority and the majority, but I don't want to mess with this 25-foot setback because we spent so much time getting here. If there's a way to do it where that pool is moved, I think that's something totally different because it doesn't fit within the parameters of that 25-foot. But for me personally, I could not support any. And I would hate for them to go through a lot of work if the majority feels the same.
And expense.
Yeah.
No, I feel I kind of am leaning in that same direction myself.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Member Moxley?
I concur on that very issue. I mean, there could be a lot of work involved in redesigning all this, and I just can't agree with having that retaining wall and that pool within that 25-foot setback.
Agree.
Thank you, Member Deering. Anyone else? Member Merlin's nodding. I think
He
he
agrees.
agrees too. Okay. All right, anyone else have anything to add before we move to the next item on the agenda? Okay, thank you, Mr. Juicy. I hope you got enough information to move forward here. All right, thank you. All right, we will go to Article 8, which is case number 3640, Cascade Township, discussion of temporary outdoor uses.
Yeah, we'll try to make it quick here. I know it's getting late. So as a result of COVID, one of the things that that the township staff did was come up with a way to basically administratively approve these businesses that have wanted to do things out in their parking lot. You've seen a bunch of the restaurants have little, cafes style type, seating or whatever. And as COVID kept getting extended, we kept extending those, this sort of temporary provision that we had. And I think it's worked quite well. It's been successful, I think. And as a result of the last extension that the board did, they asked the planning commission to look at doing this permanently. These types of activities are permitted right now. There's either two ways that you do it. It's either what we would define as a short-term event, 72 hours or less, where somebody might have something in their parking lot, or long-term. Some of you might remember when we did the barbecue place, when you have a use that is outside permanently, I guess I'll call it. We do a type 2 special use permit, which is a planning commission public hearing and a board approval. As you can imagine, that takes about 6 weeks to go through that process because of the public hearing and the requirements. So what we've been doing is been doing this administratively. So that is what the board has asked the planning commission to look at, to see if that is something that we want to do permanently. So it wouldn't have to go through the 6-week special use permit process to do what we've been doing for almost a year now. So what I'm asking tonight is basically just to introduce the idea and to set the public hearing for the July Planning Commission meeting. Answer any questions that you have, of course.
Does anyone have any comments or questions of staff on this one? Looks fairly cut and dry to me.
I love this. I think it's great. It encourages commerce and it makes it happen fast.
Yeah, I think it's been successful.
Yeah.
Accepted very well. The businesses like it.
So this
This
would be, if you drive down, you see kind of like the igloos and stuff
Yeah.
like that, right? That's what we're trying to get. Is there a design or something standard that they have to be there? You can only have a shed, sorry, I'll go up by the microphone, like a shed looking style, or maybe it's an igloo, or maybe it's just tables. Is that what we're looking at as well, trying to set some of those bounds?
I guess that would be up to you guys if you wanted to. Right now, we don't have any, standards, whether or not it's the igloos from Thornapple Brewing, or, you've seen the little glass huts, around other cities too, I'm sure.
Mhm.
So we don't have any of those standards. So we certainly could start to do that. I would just tell you that without kind of skipping ahead, I think we've got kind of a mixed bag of, and, it's been fine. Depending on what you do, it may require some review by the building inspector. The tents require some review by the fire department. So, and that's all part of the process when they get these permits anyways.
Is there a plan to reach out to businesses to have them here to provide some input? So I think that would be really helpful to hear. Thornapple Brewing is one that you brought up. If a notice goes out, that we can be able to ask them.
Yeah, we'll
questions like
certainly be
what's-
doing the public
Okay.
noticing, but our, Sandra, our economic development person in the office, certainly has already reached out to a bunch of these businesses who, have been kind of telling her, geez, this is working out great. So we will certainly reach out to them during, any kind of public hearing phase that we have.
Okay. Just one last comment.
Yeah.
Just, I guess from my standpoint, it'd be nice to see something like seasonal. If there is anything, because igloo would be great in the winter, maybe not good in the summer. So just how that might work. That'd be my only thing, would be trying to understand how that might look.
is there a time frame now if somebody gets a permit for it? Is it just until the end of this is through, or do they set a time that they are putting up 6 buildings out in front on the sidewalk?
So right now, they could just have it until this provision expires. I guess you'd have the ability to look at that when we do the public hearing type stuff. But if that's a concern, that could be something that we looked at as part of this amendment.
Member Merlin.
I just wanted to make the comment. I'm all in favor of the concept here. I would like to see a little, not down to every detail, but of some standard set, because I was in one of them in front of some restaurant that one of my kids was taking my wife and myself to. Lovely, it was a lovely place to eat, but the aesthetics of it were, from the outside, were just not attractive. And because it had plastic banging against and those sorts of things. So I would like to see some standards, not a lot, but that the businesses could agree on and that we could agree on.
Okay, well, we can try to incorporate that in our process. Any other comments to make? I'm not hearing any. I think you've got some work to do.
Agree to set the public hearing? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I think we agree to set
All
the
right.
public hearing.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Or I should say Director Peterson. And with that, I guess we go to Article 9, which is to review the King County Road Commission's 5-year improvement plan.
Right, so this was mentioned earlier. This is kind of an annual report that you guys get, so I'm sure this looks very similar to a bunch of you. This is basically just a summary of the work that they've got going in Cascade Township. It's not all of the work, of course. The manager annually reviews the local road construction. So when you see the roads in your subdivision being rebuilt, that's basically that local road overlay, that comment that you see in there. But we try to give this to you every year to kind of just let you know what's happening out there. I know at least it seems like it's gotten skimpier and skimpier from the road commission as the years have gone by, but again, it's just to keep you informed of what they've got on their list. And to remember that their 5-year plan, there's been things in their 5-year plan for 15 years. So it's not a construction plan.
Right. I'm still bummed that they don't have anything in there between Whitneyville and Buttrick on Cascade Road, because they seem to forget about that little spot, and it hasn't been reconstructed in a very long time.
Yeah. Well, and I know as the comment was made earlier, kind of about, the role that we play in there, and we do have some say with, roads, but, we kind of try to influence the road commission as best we can. But yeah, we don't have the deciding vote on what the road commission does. We don't set speed limits. So, roads are a big part of Cascade Township. I don't disagree with that at all, but we don't have a lot of say, but we try to use our influence and try to get things on this list and hopeful, that they get done eventually, but it is up to the road commission.
Thank you.
That was going to be my question, which was how much input we had in this process, both for speed and for resurfacing, but you just answered it.
Yeah, speed less than we even have for influence, but
Member Moxley.
Yeah, what's the status on the non-motorized trail and bridge over I-96? Are they gonna start working on it this year?
So we're working on it right now. Yeah, it's happening. We have the grant money. So I think right now it is under review by because it's a bridge over the expressway, it has to get reviewed by the Federal Highway Department. So it's under their review right now. We were hoping that they would be done earlier because there was a bid letting, because then it goes through the state process for construction. And it's managed by the road commission and the township is paying for it. So everybody's involved. So it's happening right now. We're hopeful that we can actually start some work this fall, even if it's just some tree clearing, and because of the big piers that they have to put for the highway crossing, you might see some big piles of dirt on both sides of the road, because that's going to be what compacts the soils for those bridges. So you should start to see some real work, even though a bunch of behind the scenes stuff has been going on this fall.
Good, because every time I drive over that and I see a bike rider on that traffic bridge,
It's
I think
scary.
this is a dangerous situation.
And just to remind everybody, it is a separate pedestrian bridge. This is not a reconstruction of Burton Street. So we weren't able to touch the road. It is a separate pedestrian bridge.
Good. Member Merlin?
If it's a separate pedestrian bridge, the Kent County Road Commission doesn't have anything to do with it, does it?
So, yeah, they do. The county is the one that obtained basically the grant money for us. That went through them. And because Burton Street, of course, is theirs, it is a county project.
One of our pathway projects.
But it's in their right of way.
Yep.
Okay, now, second question is, how much is this now likely going to cost versus what it was originally projected to cost?
I'd have to look that up. I don't have that number right in front of me. It certainly there has been added cost as it relates to the soils underneath that weren't as good as what, I mean, you don't know until you drill down there 100 feet, what they're like. So certainly that has some added cost to it.
But it's more than some, isn't it? It is
I
would
honestly
really
don't
like to
remember.
hear at some point soon that answer. because
I can get that
think
for you
it's
for the next meeting. That's not a problem. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head.
I think it's a very large number, but we'll see. And how much is the grant for?
1.3 million, I think. I'll get you all the numbers at the next meeting. That's fine.
Okay.
One last question. Which we're spending all that money connecting to Kentwood. What are we doing about the bridge over the Thornapple on Cascade?
Yeah, so I think in our last updated with the master plan, we talked about putting up, the idea of putting up a pedestrian bridge over the river. So you didn't have to walk across Cascade Road. I know it's got sidewalks on that bridge, but they're elevated, speeds are fast. I think we talked a lot about that area, but there has been no concerted effort of doing anything at this point. It doesn't seem like it's, risen to, a top priority for the board at this point, but.
You mean for the Board of Trustees?
Yes.
Because I think it's a top priority of a whole lot of citizens.
Well, and I think that's why it surfaced with the master plan update is because, we've heard that.
Correct.
It's complicated. I mean, it's a difficult spot. You've got private property on sort of both ends. So, I'm sure it'll be a challenge like they all are, but yeah, there's been no, design plans or anything drawn up.
I know we had the millage specifically call out the pathway toward Kentwood. And so I guess we have to use the millage money to connect with Kentwood.
So you're right. The millage identified several different pathways, and that's what the voters voted on.
Right. Boy, every dollar we spend connecting with Kentwood is a dollar loss. Crossing Cascade or crossing the river and connecting the two halves of Cascade Township together more completely.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add at this time regarding the 5-year plan for the road commission? No? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Steve. We'll move on to Article 10, which is election of vice chairperson. As I think everybody knows, unfortunately, member Phil Johnson he served as secretary and then as vice chairman for 3 years, and he is not with us now. We now have member Merlin in his seat, which brings a whole new list of experiences and talent to the table. So we, at this time, have to elect a new vice chairman to the planning commission to fill that vacancy as far as officers concerned. And so at that point, I would look to see if anybody had anything to comment or make. Member Moxley?
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Chris Nordike for the vice chair.
Second.
I think Member Merlin beat Member Nordhook to the second for the motion made by Moxley to nominate Member Nordike. So any discussion? All right. Would all those in favor say aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Member Nordike, you are now vice chairman. And I'll let you know, I'm going to miss the next few meetings if they have long agendas like this. And
I was
just
gonna say, did we skip the step where he accepted the
Right,
nomination?
right. The agenda looks longer than 20 minutes. Count yourself in the hot seat. No. Okay, so with that, we will move on to Article 11. I think that was the fastest agenda item of the evening. Article 11 is any other business. And it is getting late in the hour, but I think we can tackle a couple quick items here. I think it'd be appropriate to do that. And I have one that I'd like to bring up really fast, and then I see you have your hand up, Member Merlin, so I'll jump right over to you. But Member Nordhook made a comment at the beginning of the meeting, and I have thought of this in the past, and I always think of it when I'm reading the packet, but not when I'm sitting here in the meeting. So I made a note when you mentioned that. And I think that we should consider changing our agendas so that it states public comment, anything not slated for public hearing. And I think that I'm curious what staff's perspective is on that. But if we had public comment for, anyone wishing to speak on any item, not, any item except those listed for public comment, or you can work on the wording. I'm not very good at that. I'm not an English teacher, but I mean, does that seem acceptable to staff to make that change? Because I understand his perspective. I've thought that in the past. And in fact, we've had people in the room complain because technically they're non-conforming in the sense of they want to comment on something, but like tonight, they want to comment on it, but it's on the agenda, but it's not a public hearing. So they're just excluded. But if you want to come in and talk about a sale at Taco Bell, you can do that.
It's completely up to you guys.
Hang on, you have to have a microphone to speak officially. And we have to wait for.
The exercise is good for him. It's good.
Yeah, it's completely up to you guys. I think the reason why it's on there the way it is because it's always been your discretion about whether or not for a non-public hearing item, whether or not you wanted to, entertain, comments or something. I think doing what you're suggesting probably advertises it a little bit more clearly that, hey, you still can, ask to make a comment where maybe somebody thinks that since it isn't a public hearing, that they don't know, if they could, ask for that. So
I think it would look better if we
yeah,
change.
it's completely up to you guys. It's always been up to you guys anyways.
Excuse me?
I think it would do more than look better.
Okay.
It would actually invite public comment on things that are important to them. And I think that's important for us.
Okay. Do you want any kind of a resolution or vote to make that change? Or is that just something you could change in the future?
Well, why don't we just kind of work on some language and maybe I'll just, shoot you something and make sure that looks okay and we'll put it on the next agenda and see. We have something in 2 weeks, so.
Does everyone feel comfortable with that?
I think it's the chairman's prerogative. It's your meeting. Like Robert Rules of Order, it does dictate.
I understand. I'm asking though, if anybody, if I'm going to make a decision, I want to make sure that you guys are going to back me up.
Sure.
I'm not going to try and make a unilateral choice to, yeah. We're going to order pizza. I want to know what you guys want on it.
In that case, we got your back.
Okay. All right.
Well, depending on what he wants on the pizza.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. JT's barbecue chicken. No. Okay. Any other business?
I have a question.
Member Jerry?
Mine is really quick. I was just wondering if we could get the packet any earlier in the week rather than Thursday
At
night,
those-
because I mean, with summer coming up, kids stuff, whatever, Thursday night is a really inopportune time to get it. Even if we could have a day or two more.
Even if it was a draft packet,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just throwing out suggestions.
Yeah, draft packet might be more complicated. I mean, we certainly will try to get it out a little earlier. I don't know about 2 days, but Wednesday we might be able to do. And maybe some of the smaller ones, we certainly could push out a little earlier. Some of them, it just becomes, we used to hand deliver the packets Friday evening on our way home. So some ways I feel like, we've made some improvements by getting them to you on Thursdays electronically, so you have them even faster. But yeah, we can certainly try. I don't want to promise that we would always have them. Sometimes we're waiting on information from applicants or other agencies. I just don't want to make any promises.
Can I throw out a suggestion here? If we know that, and I'm going to use tonight's packet as an example, okay? You have all of the preliminary information for Round Hill and Cascade Township, but you're waiting on something for the car wash. Does it make sense to send the packet with the for the cases you have and just put the case number on there and the title, and then just say, waiting for more information, and then when the other information comes, you resend the complete packet. But and then at that point, if somebody had time, they can already do their site visits and review of the other agenda items. And then over the weekend, they just have that one section to cover. I think that from our perspective, to get 3 or 4 cases on a Friday night or a Friday afternoon, and then you have the weekend. If you're working on Monday, you have the weekend to digest it. So to get a couple more days, I agree would be helpful. But maybe if I'm just throwing that out as an idea, and I know that probably puts a more burden on staff and complication there, but I think that would be. I hear that commentary a lot from the committee.
Well, let us kind of work on that a little bit rather than, yes or no anything, but let us work on that a little bit, see what we can do.
Okay.
I also, there's just a few things I guess we want to work through on that, but
See if we can tweak it a little.
let us work on that and we'll report back and see what we can do. But I hear what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
We want you to make the site visits too. And I mean, that's very helpful if that's what it takes to get you guys out there. I mean, we want to do that too.
Mhm. Okay.
I have just another quick
Have a
thing
question?
about the agenda.
Yes.
I just have a question. This is something that was frustrating to me before I was a part of this, and now I think it's even a little more frustrating. Is there a way to talk old business on the agenda? And what I'm saying is there was member comments last time. One of them was about the property on Cascade Road north of Burton that had construction machinery. And the discussion was that they would check with you and come back to us at the next meeting to discuss that. And then it's not mentioned at all. And I think that as an outsider watching this and being here, I think that several times there's things that come up during the meeting that we are told, we'll check into that and get back to you. I think
then
we
we
just talked about several of those.
And then it gets forgotten.
Yeah, and I think that in my previous life, we always had old business, and it wasn't old business like the stuff you guys hashed out 5 years ago. It's old business moving forward from the last agenda that was not completed, to come back to remind us that, oh yeah, we did want to know about that. It also helps you to remember, oh, I was going to check into that to bring it back to us.
Like the cost figures on the bridge.
Right. That's what I heard that tonight, and I wrote a note of it because I'm like, oh, maybe it will come next time. Maybe it won't. So just to have something that can be that old business that has been in before, just to bring it
Sure.
up. And again, it's not anybody's fault, but how can you remember if you don't have it on an agenda item as well?
Well, since member Moxley made those remarks, I'm going to turn the camera over to him.
I am following on that. I'm going to be talking to Stephanie in greater detail about that in the next day or two. But it has not been forgotten, believe me. Every time I drive by that site, I think something's got to be done.
Right. So that's just my thought. It maybe will help you guys as well, just so that you can see it on the agenda, just to remind you when you're preparing for the meeting as well. That's just-
Yeah, I have no problem putting a old business item on the agenda. It's not a bad idea.
Member Merlin, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would actually. And that goes even in one sense to the conversation we've had tonight. Just now, we control the agenda. The recording secretary prepares the agenda. That doesn't mean the recording secretary controls the agenda. If we want the materials a day or two early, we can certainly work cooperatively with the staff as we were trying to do tonight. But ultimately, the staff works for the Planning Commission. And what I've seen over the last few years in attending meetings is more frequently the Planning Commission working for the staff. And in particular, working for Director Peterson. And that goes in part to those rules of conduct. Do we have anyone on Zoom at all? Stephanie?
Supervisor Lesperance.
That's all. So we don't have Mike. Only here.
There.
Okay. Those rules of conduct, in my view, go substantially beyond what is legally required and frankly, what is appropriate. And I've heard you talk about members not being able to talk to other members. We can't deliberate, but we can discuss in the sense of asking a question, or if someone has a question, calling somebody. When Scott sent me an email response, it said that was the first email he had ever sent to a member since you have been on the Planning Commission.
I haven't been here that long, but I would say that, yes, I believe it was the first time.
And you also said in another one that the last three planning, the chairs.
Well, to my knowledge, I'm not
Your
aware of the last three planning chairs. No, but when you made that comment that the Planning Commission, I think your words were works for Steve, or it's appeared as though it's working for Steve. I would say that in my time being here, we have certainly had times where I felt that the Planning Commission was weak. And we've had times where I felt the Planning Commission was strong. Maybe that's not the right word. We've had times where the Planning Commission was passive and the Planning Commission was very engaged and active. And so I would say that, there's give and take there, but
But fundamental question. Director Peterson, do you tell members they cannot talk with other members? I've heard you say it, but.
Yeah, I don't know if I've said that. I think we've tried to, certainly annually when we hand out all of our rules, to remind everybody to have all of the discussion in here. So I don't think I've ever said you can't talk to one another, but you want to have all of the discussion in here so that when the public is in here, they also don't hear you saying, oh, but when I talked to you the other day on the phone, even though maybe some of that could be done technically, I think it could be perceived that there were some backdoor deals going on. So yeah, I have tried to hand out those rules so you guys have those annually and remind you what the rules of conduct are.
Well, I would like to have our new Township General Counsel tell us his view of our rules of conduct. And hopefully, I was hoping he would be on the call tonight and draft some new ones, because those go well beyond what's legally required, even under an appearance of impropriety notion, which I wholeheartedly agree with you on, Director Peterson. We need to go beyond what the law minimally requires. But there are distinctions under the Open Meetings Act, and just in good, newer members need mentoring from older members at times. That's not deliberations, which cannot happen outside of an open meeting.
So, Member Merlin, I also agree with you about being able to talk to legal counsel. And I had the opportunity to do that as I had member Nordyke with me. And I brainstormed a series of questions ahead of time without talking to anyone. I just came up with them on my own. I did share them with my wife 5 minutes before the meeting. But one of the things that we talked about was the rules of conduct and the communication between members. And in that conversation with council, we had the conversation that I think it would be appropriate for us as a committee to individually brainstorm some questions that we might have of legal counsel, and then invite legal counsel to a meeting at some point down the road, presenting staff and legal counsel with those questions prior to that meeting, and then they could come in and answer them.
And I guess my only comment was, I've also talked to council, the township's council, and I think we would all be somewhat surprised. I mean, I'd like him to show us what, in all the hundreds of townships that he's represented, or what he finds to be typical rules of conduct for a planning commission. And I'd love to have his view of ours, because I think that restrains the not deliberation between members, but it constrains the progression of members into becoming more effective members.
Right, and I think this is a good segue into one of the concerns that we talked about with the attorney is communication between us that is outside of a meeting, if that happens. And one of the topics that member Nordyke hit on very strongly, I'll let you take it, but it was related to email.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly, and I've spoken with Supervisor Les Prince about this. I wholeheartedly believe that we should have Cascade emails. It's just a request I haven't made to you yet. Just for simple FOIA protection, right? I don't want my email availed, right? And it shouldn't be, because we're not communicating, but I don't even want to have to go through a discovery request. And you know, and Craig can appreciate that I have, because I'm speaking to it, right? And it's not fun. And so if it's possible, it would be nice, because then we could communicate without deliberating. And I think it's a great best practice when we do communicate with the group to BCC everybody but the chairman or you, so that there's not a response, you know, that would lead to deliberation, right? But if I want to ask Ralph a question, because he's a resident architect, about a grade issue, or Craig, because he's now our resident legal expert, a legal question, and if he has an interpretation, that would be helpful. And I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that with my personal email, should the applicant ever ask.
I think
And I think that, right, but I think that goes along with why Steve has been very adamant that we try to keep the communication in here as a protection for us using that's kind of how you explained it to me a while back, is that it's a protection for us, because we don't have the township email addresses. But if we did, that might be, so I mean, that's something I think we could explore a little closer.
Yeah, and I think we need to explore it as quickly as possible, because I think it has led to the less effective planning commission.
Our attorney indicated to me that I believe his words were, I'm not aware of any other township that doesn't have email addresses for its plan. He was in awe over the fact that we don't have township email.
Well, this could be a good conversation that others would benefit from. I mean, the zoning board of appeals, you know, the township board. and just-
Absolutely.
Just how all of that is done.
Absolutely. Yeah. And member Moxley, our representative of the ZBA, I'm sure could bring that up over there.
Now, the other question I'd raise in trying to make this a more active and effective planning commission is, what is our first function laid out in terms of what our responsibilities are in our own zoning ordinance and in one of the key functions of this planning commission,
Clarify what's happened so people.
Yeah, so basically, we've lost our Zoom connection. So anybody who's watching online, which it sounds like is just Supervisor Lesperance, but anybody who's,
To be clear, we did not lose the Zoom feed. We just lost audio.
Okay.
It looks to me like it's been restored, but let me send a text to verify that quick a minute.
The
Okay,
recording
thank
would
you.
not show any of this, Craig. That's the concern with continuing on right now.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
so and I didn't think it would happen tonight because it's a township board meeting. It only happens when Manager Swayze stands up to speak. So since
It's-
he's not here, I thought we'd be safe, but apparently.
Mr. Chairman, the audio is back. I have
All
confirmation.
right. So we will resume the meeting. If you're on Zoom, we were just kind of talking a little there. You didn't miss anything because we took a short recess while the audio was down, but
Okay, the other comment I'd have is again, this functional responsibility for the comprehensive plan. And I know that Cascade is now starting the process of its 4-year strategic plan, which is an integral part of the comprehensive plan going forward. And it isn't an issue of whether Supervisor Lesperance can ask McKenna to talk with us or not. We actually should have a significant seat at that table now, because this is really the opportunity to get the feedback from all of the citizens on what priorities they might have for the township. Because I see, and I've seen this now for, lived in Cascade for what, 28 years or so, but certainly for the last few, I have seen what appears to me to be a vision held by some people surrounding a 3-pronged destination location. And I don't see it wrapped up in a strategic way where all the pieces come together well. I mean, I appreciate Member Nordike. I keep getting my Nordhooks and my Nordikes confused.
That's why they put us together at the same
Yeah.
table and make it easy.
Member Nordike in getting the PFAS issue onto the capital improvement plan. Incredible to me that it had reached that stage before it was put on, because there wasn't the strategic sort of oversight that this commission really should be the prime driver of, according to
well,
the state law as well as our own zoning ordinance.
And I think we were, and I think the, the issues of the, water and expanding sewer water has been, something that we have heard and something that's been in our master plan. It's the reason why we've made changes to some of our sewer water ordinances. So I think there's a lot of those things, that we've been doing. So that hasn't gone unheard.
I want
You're
a
right.
quick point of clarification, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
yes.
And I appreciate it, Craig. Scott had brought it up the year before. I'm just the one who got loud when they didn't put it in. So I
I
just,
did bring it up the year before, and I
Yeah.
was told that I would anticipate seeing it at the next plan, and then it wasn't there, and
That's
he
when I
beat me
got
to the
upset.
punch.
Okay,
yeah, so
And that's exactly my point.
Yeah,
We.
but I would say that we, the planning commission, brought that up at 2 particular events and got it on there.
Finally, on the second time you got it on there, or we got it on there, we should have gotten it on there in the first attempt. And I don't know why it wasn't on there. And I know the residents of the Berger area are very irate, some of them, because we have seemed to do nothing for several years with something goes to the health and safety of their children. Now we're doing something, but I remember several members of the Board of Trustees in January standing up and saying, led by Trustee Kessel, standing up and saying, we'll spend township money to begin working on the PFAS problem. So when we get our grant, we will have shovels in the ground. We're not going to have shovels in the ground. We haven't spent $1 of township money on that, at least from looking at Board of Trustee actions. I have no idea why. This commission has spent so far this year until tonight, 5 hours and 5 minutes in meetings this year. This meeting may may equal that. No, it won't, but
No.
it's, I just think we need to be much more aggressive. We're in control of the agenda. We should get it, you should get it before the public sees it, certainly. Because you mentioned sometimes you get it at the same time the public sees it.
I would say always get it the same time you get it. I will say that occasionally, and this was the case for this meeting, that the staff has reached out to me and said, hey, this is what will be on the agenda, but typically I don't see the packet until everybody else
But you
does.
should, because you're in charge of the agenda. This is your commission. He works. for
Steve,
you.
has any chairman prior asked to have the agendas prior to the rest of the committee? Has that ever come up?
They haven't. They haven't.
Can I ask anybody else who has served as chairman of a commission or a board or a committee ever allowed that committee to meet without having previous to the meeting seen the agenda?
No,
and
I
control
wouldn't
it?
say anything I've ever chaired. I've seen the agenda ahead of time.
Craig,
Every
as a
time.
non-exec chairman, I will respectfully disagree, because I appreciate where you're at with that. As a non-exec chair, yeah, absolutely, I'd let my execs do it, right? Or, you know, like the CEO of a company in a corporate structure. If I'm a non-exec chair, sure, I'll let them prepare it, but you're absolutely right. I will see it in advance.
You'll see it in advance, you'll get
Yes.
to comment on it in advance, and
Yep.
other things you want on it in advance. I don't have any problem with the staff, because they have things that just have to be done, and they know what they're doing. They can, on a time frame, adjust their time frame somewhat to answer Member Deering's comment.
Remember, Merlin, before you get too far down the path here, can I interrupt for 1 second and circle back on a planning thing you brought up a moment ago?
Yep.
I don't want to ignore the agenda thing. I want to talk about it, but I don't want to
Talk about the
forget
planning.
about the planning side before we
Yes.
get to the agenda item. So with regard to McKenna and what they're doing, Steve, has there been any discussion on the staff end for including the planning commission in any of that process? As Member Merlin is
I
bringing
have
up?
not,
Have you heard
I
anything
have
about
not
that?
seen the RFP. I have not seen the scope of work. It's really something being done through the manager's office. So I have not seen anything in regards to the strategic plan. I know that he's been planning it, but I have not seen it.
Not to put the assistant manager on the spot, but she is sitting in the room. So I just thought I'd ask and see if she's aware of anything.
Fair enough. That's being handled by Manager Swayze. I have not seen anything either.
Okay.
So
All
we're
right.
sitting here, the group responsible for it, with no knowledge of it, with Manager Swayze in control of that process. And even within the staff, they don't have it linked. So how can we expect a coherent, cohesive, strategic?
I think since we have trustee Nordhook as a representative to the board, I would recommend that he bring this back to the board and let them know that we want to be, if that's a consensus, we want to be more involved with this process.
I've been pushing.
Okay, because I think you can push a little harder and say that there's 9 of us that are behind you pushing as well.
There's
Am
a
I
new-
wrong to say that? I mean, does everybody?
I have
kinda
my
agree
whole
that-
bag full of wrenches that I throw in things.
I hear
and
about that bag, but
I'm bringing one with me tomorrow to the township hall on that subject.
well, you can let them know there's 9 more wrenches in the bag and they're getting those wrenches are getting pretty heavy.
And I also want to see
Outnumbered
these,
at 9 to 7.
I'm also pushing on these temporary whole house PFAS filters. I've been pushing on that now for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So just let you know, I'm not just sitting around drinking coffee.
With regard to the agenda item, Mr. Merlin, Steve, it would, I understand that there's a deadline when an applicant puts something on the agenda. There's a deadline that they have to submit the request to you guys. And I know sometimes you give them a little extra time to get a document to you or something, but it would seem to me that a week before the meeting, you have an indication of what's going to be on the agenda. Is that a fair
I
statement?
would have, you're right. Nobody has ever asked to see the agenda ahead of time.
Sure.
We would have no problem, sharing that with the chair for you to comment on it. That isn't the problem. It has been probably more of a practical matter of just some people in your seat, maybe just, maybe they didn't want to, they just, delegated that. So nobody is
Right.
So
No,
we
I
have taken care, but
I
that is
understand.
not a, I mean, we wouldn't be opposed to that.
I never thought you would, and I'm not implying that you were or are. I'm just simply trying to.
Yeah, there's a timeline in there where even though we might not have, even if we're waiting on some material from somebody, we would know what's
You
on
know
the agenda.
topics. Right. Right. Okay. Well, then maybe we could try to start doing.
Yeah, yeah, that's,
All right.
you give me
Just
quite a
back
laundry
to
list of old business
member-
items.
I was just gonna say, never mind. It was just a short comment about, I know you had requested more of the whole packet early, but it's all of a sudden it's okay that we can get at least the agenda a week before, but rewind 45 minutes ago and it seemed like it was more of an issue. So I
Well,
just
that
find
was the whole
interesting.
packet,
I
to get
know,
the
but
packet
even
early.
the agenda would be nice for all of us, I think, to have ahead of time. More of the packet would be nice, but just to know what we're going to be going through. There's a lot of things you can do just based on the agenda.
I mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think,
Well, let me,
go ahead.
okay, I was gonna say,
It's your
what
commission.
I was gonna say, well, we're all part of it. If I receive I'm gonna call it a draft agenda, okay? And I approve that agenda, is there an issue with me forwarding it to the planning commission at the point that I approve it? I'm speaking hypothetically here, but I mean, at that point then you guys get your heads up ahead of time. And, I could respond to you and say, I approve the agenda, and then I could BCC everybody on the committee, so they get a taste of what's coming. They can prepare mentally for the dozens of pages of reading they have coming their way. And then obviously staff's gonna try to work to get the packets out a little sooner, I think is what we talked about. But does that sound like a good approach here to resolve some of these concerns?
Well, I think the one thing I would be is a bit more directive on the staff and getting the packet out sooner. We should not be seeing the packet at the same time the public sees the packet either. And on the agenda, we should be able to give ideas to you to put on the agenda when you send out that draft agenda.
Right. I agree with you, Member Merlin, on the packet not coming till the Friday. But I want to, before I get direct with staff, I'd like to give staff the opportunity to try and work out the details of the problem and give them time to find a workable solution.
I am.
So,
It's your commission, I'm happy that happens.
And I recall.
We just got to remember, we're in charge.
Sure. I recall growing up, a friend of mine's father served on a township board as a trustee and as a planning commissioner for a period of time in Ada, I believe it was. And every Friday night around 8 or 9 o'clock, a fire truck would pull up and give him the packet for the meeting the following week. So, as Steve stated earlier, they used to hand deliver the packets on Friday night. And now time has, technology has evolved, and maybe the preparation hasn't quite evolved with the technology. So hopefully we could try to find a way to get them out sooner, because,
All I would say is that where I have worked, we developed, and in fact, in one place I worked, we laid out every one of the major processes used in that company, which was a $1 billion company, that it did its manufacturing through, did all of its process work. I think we need to have more processes, because one of the things we found is that when mistakes were made, they arose more from process errors than they did from personal mistakes.
Okay.
And so part of this is like the old business. They have a list of old business there as part of their checklist. And so they can tell us, well, we don't have the answer to that this week. We're going to have it in 2 weeks or whatever. So that there are processes laid out so that we can get the agendas and the packets a few days early. And that means, do you know right now what is likely to be on the agenda in 2 weeks?
We know we have at least 2 public hearings. Yeah. And some old business.
Absolutely.
And I'll just add that typically at the end of the meeting, Steve usually tells us what's at the next meeting. So we do get a little bit of a taste of what's coming.
So in that sense, you've got that part of the process and you've got, in essence, the baseline of your agenda for the next meeting 2 weeks before. So you just, and you probably.
Yeah, the
have a pretty-
agenda part is easy. I mean, the agenda part is easy. It's
It's
sometimes
packed.
just waiting for some other material, but yeah, I think we're, I think we're all in agreement. I mean,
And you
we can
agree
certainly
that
try.
you could not reject something because Ms. Chairman Rizzi said that, for example, my agenda items have to be approved by you to go on the agenda.
I've never rejected anything if somebody's asked.
So you
for
don't have the
something.
right to reject, do you?
I haven't even considered whether I do or not. It doesn't.
No, I'm just talking as a theoretical, as just a legal construct. You, and so, next question, are you?
I
even
guess
the
if there was some
planning director
hypothetical
now?
that we were concerned about, I suppose I'd ask the township attorney, but
I
that has
am
literally
not
never
aware
happened.
of Steve ever rejecting anything that was asked to be put on the agenda. And I have asked Steve to put stuff on the agenda before, not a lot of things.
Right,
but
and all I
certain
would
things.
say is, as a legal matter, I would argue Steve does not have the right to reject it.
Probably not, but since he never has it, I didn't have to look at the legal side of it. But, and I don't know if the other planning commissioner and chairman have ever asked you to add much to the agenda. Have they had much interaction?
Yeah, I
with it?
mean, there's been things from time to time. I mean, certainly John Spurlow was big into stormwater, so we probably added
He
a few
was.
things as it related to some of that stuff, but it's not unheard of, but it's been infrequent.
Infrequent that somebody asked.
That the chairman asked for a specific item on the agenda.
I
I
would
think with
just
new
add,
perspectives, you might have it more frequently.
And that's fine. I just historically, I mean,
Right.
I guess you're asking, that's just.
That goes with
happen.
my comment earlier, that sometimes you have a very active people on this side of the counter, and sometimes you have people that aren't as active, they're a little bit more just relaxed. Yes, member
I would
Rabbit.
just add that many times we've asked for things to be placed on the next agenda, say updates on something we discussed in the past. The only feedback we've ever received is whether or not we have a large agenda, and timing wise, if it would be better to handle it on the next one. And I'm thinking more towards our first meetings when we had a lot of long agendas for the property behind us, where we would choose based on that input to put something on the following agenda. But I think we've often asked for items.
Well, again, my only point
Particularly
is,
reviews,
Yes.
reviews of past cases
Correct.
we've discussed. Yeah.
my only comment is actually threefold. One, I think this has been a good session from my perspective, and I hope changing a little bit of that dynamic of we need to move quickly on new rules of conduct and working with the town council on that. We are in charge and you are in charge of the commission, and that we have an active planning responsibility. And that we should exercise that right now with regard to the strategic plan. And
So to. Go ahead.
do we do an annual report to the board?
We do an annual report and I give it to the manager.
The town manager?
Yeah.
Statutorily, we have an obligation to do an annual report by this commission to the board.
We
He
do an annual
gives us
report.
the annual report.
But the annual report that I read from January was the annual report of the Community Development Department, not the Planning Commission.
I guess I call that all-inclusive.
I don't, because we don't, that's not what the statute says, and that's not who wrote the report. And it's not, I mean, we have that obligation under statute to do it.
So are you saying that you would like all of us to draft the report, not
No,
have staff?
I
do
think
that?
staff drafts the report.
But we approve it before they,
We
we
absolutely.
make modifications to it before they present it to the manager?
No, and it doesn't get presented to the manager. Statutorily, it gets presented to the Board of Trustees. Section 19(2) of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act.
I don't think I read that one.
But again, it's one of those notions of, I think the staff, just like in any organization, a board of directors of a company, represented them for 40 years. Sure, the staff of the company does much of the work, but the board reviews it. The board corrects it where it wants to, puts its own imprint on it, and it becomes a report by the board. Just as this one should be as well, because your community planning department is not what building and grounds do. I don't care, frankly, that much. So that's why.
Okay, I think given the time, I think what I would like to do is pick up the conversation on that planning report as we get closer to the end of the year, maybe not all the way at the end, but at some point down the road, let's talk more about that in detail, how we want to get to that
absolutely
end goal.
Absolutely.
But right now, I think what we need to focus on is, let's see, now I lost my train of thought here. This is what happens when it gets this late. Right now, I think what we need to work on is, well, I think we just did, as far as moving forward related to the agendas and whatnot. And there's one other item you brought up right before that.
Plan.
The strategic plan. Thank you. Thank you for jogging my memory. So member Nordhook or trustee Nordhook is going to talk to the township board and you're gonna throw wrenches at them.
Yep.
Okay. And then, which shouldn't be a problem because there's only 7 of them and there's 9 of us. So that's more than 1 wrench per board member.
And we're tougher.
Could be. I haven't arm wrestled any of them, but could be. So my thought is if your voice is unheard there, what is our recourse as a committee? I'm not trying to open this up to a long discussion. I just want real quick answers here. Steve, could we essentially throw a resolution that we're asking the board to include us in this process? Is that I mean, I don't see any reason why the township board is going to skate around that, but I mean, what is your take on this, member or trustee Norduck?
My understanding was part of the process of gathering information was they're going to come at us as board members, they're going to come at department heads. They're going to interview everybody for their list of ideas. And my understanding was everybody on this board is going to be asked for their ideas.
Okay.
What their plans are, what they want to see the township, what priorities. And then they're going to go after the citizens and try to get as much information from them in surveys in person now that we can do that.
But
So-
who's they?
The company we hired to do the strategic plan.
So McKenna is now running the planning operations of Cascade.
No, they're gathering information for the plan, and you're part of that information.
I would argue that we should be leading the effort to do 2 things in particular that I, having at least looked at some of the questions McKenna's had,
So
to get the input of the full community of Cascade and to make sure that we allow them to set the priorities of this township, not the town manager, not the planning director, not, I mean, in essence, we operate as representatives of the citizens of Cascade.
sure. I think we all do. So it sounds to me like the main concern here is that I believe member Merlin believes that this should have probably, this whole process should have originated here and not at the board level. And perhaps the board should have sent the process down to us before the RFP went out and for us to be involved. And I think that's really where the kink is in the system. And I think you need to relay that to the board. I'm not trying to put this on your lap, but you are the
worries.
representative. So I mean, I don't,
I got this.
I don't take it personally, but that's your
No.
job.
Got it.
Okay,
Now,
good.
one other thing, just as a matter of interest, on the master plan under the state statute, that master plan must be approved by this commission before it goes to the board. And if the board then has concerns with it, it doesn't disapprove it and just, or approves whatever it wants to. It has to disapprove it, note its comments, and send it back to this planning commission to review those comments and to adjust it.
So let's just do maybe just one clarification, because the process we did during that last one, the board asserted their right to approve the plan.
The board
So-
has a right to assert its approval, but that approval is in essence instead of the ultimate authority being here. It doesn't mean that they can say, I want X and I don't give a darn what the planning commission says. It has to be, if they don't like what we submit, because they're asserting they have the ultimate control, they send it back to
Yeah,
us.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but the process we did, it came through here, you guys approved in that, and then it went to the board
But when
for
we
their
approved
approval.
it, was that the one, Scott, where
I believe that at that time when I had thrown out the idea of tabling that approval, in fact, because I liked the comment of Jeff Dion and I didn't like the idea of the trees on the bridge and there was a road through the car wash that everybody in the room commented that they were not in favor of. And so I had made the comment of, well, do we want to table this and make some modifications to it? And the response I got was that the board was going to assert its right to approve it the next, I think it was the next day or that meeting, that week on their Wednesday agenda.
whether or
Not we approved it, they were going to approve it as
which
presented.
violates state statutes, just as a matter of interest,
Well,
several. But
could be. The more research I've done since then, I think I would have handled that differently had it come up now, but that goes along with having the experience of sitting here over time. You gain these things and knowledge on different topics. And so, I mean, there's, but that's what the communication from the board was at that time. It was a different board then, just like it was a different planning commission then. But
yep,
that was how I heard it. So I think, guys, it's 7 minutes after 10. I think I work till 2
every night. So
well, good for you. I have to be in my office at 6 a.m., which is less than 8 hours. So, but yeah, so I at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. And if we have other business next time, we can. Thank you, Member Merlin. And I think I heard support from several members over here. I'm going to go with Member Deering because she has a better smile. And with that, all in favor of adjourn, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you to everybody tonight. It was a productive meeting, I think.
I was so close to saying
Oh, boy.
Just-
If you had said nay, I think